He takes the snap.
That's going to do it.
Vanderbilt.
Biggest win in Vanderbilt history.
Is this real life? You bet. Vanderbilt beats Alabama for the first time in a generation. The greatest moment in Vanderbilt football history.
The upset of the century. That's right. Vanderbilt beats Alabama on Saturday afternoon. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3. The game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live today from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios. Ian is here today. Ian, how about the Commodores on Saturday?
Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
So I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm not going to lie. I didn't see it coming. I didn't see it coming. I think everybody probably feels the same way on that. But I was overwhelmed on Saturday with joy. So much so that with about 5 minutes left in the game, and Ian was on the receiving end on a lot of these texts, but me and Chase were like, screw it. After the Vanderbilt postgame show's over, we're going live. We went live for 2 hours on Saturday night after, as Andrew Allegretta said in the play-by-play call right there, the greatest win in Vanderbilt football history. It's the biggest upset I can remember for Vanderbilt. Obviously, they've never beaten a top 5 team before. And not only did they beat Alabama, but they bludgeoned Alabama on Saturday. And the head coach of the Vanderbilt Commodores, Clark Lee, will be right here on Stillman and Company today at 4:20 p.m., which we are excited about. So I want to start with something I've learned a long time ago. I've learned this the hard way. Sometimes this is good if your team is a team that's, and sometimes it can be really tough if you're in Alabama, the Lakers, the Yankees, the whatever. In sports, every dog has its day. I would argue the worst franchise in Major League Baseball, the Miami Marlins, they've won the World Series twice. The worst franchise in the 80s in the NFL, the Buccaneers, I mean the worst. They've won 2 Super Bowls. Detroit, which is year in and year out one of the worst teams in the NFL, they're a Super Bowl contender right now. Every dog has its day. It's just a matter of how long you wait. Well, Saturday was Vanderbilt's day because for 60 minutes, Vanderbilt outplayed the number 1 team in the country. And this is a bona fide number 1 team. Like, I know Alabama didn't look it on Saturday, giving up 40 points, but we saw what Alabama did the previous Saturday against Georgia in the game of the year when Alabama proved themselves to be still on top of the SEC, even with Nick Sabin on College game day. Vandy did not win an SEC game last year. They went 2-10. Alabama, meanwhile, last year went to overtime in the Rose Bowl against the eventual national champions. And Vandy dropped 40 points. Vanderbilt never trailed. The last time Alabama got beaten like that, Joe Burrow was the starting quarterback at LSU. If I had come on air on Friday and I had said, guys, Vanderbilt's going to drop 40 on Bama, you guys would have said, Jared Stillman just makes up crap. Some of you already say that, but there'd be a lot of you that would be saying that. And yet, my favorite part of that victory on Saturday, it wasn't the celebration on the field, although that looked great. It wasn't the carrying of the goalposts on Broadway, which also looked awesome. And I think, again, look, money talks in the NIL era, but I think that's great for Vanderbilt to kind of have that, hey, this party city that everybody always talks about, we're taking it over and we're taking the goalposts down and we're throwing them in the river. But my favorite part of Saturday was after the game was over and after the post-game show, and we did 2 hours. And I didn't know. You know, Vanderbilt doesn't have like a post-game call-in show. And I say, you know, we're going to do it for this special occasion. And I didn't know what the response was going to be. I didn't know. Were we going to get a lot of people calling in? Was it going to be people that didn't even know it existed? Was it going to be, you know, some people out there that maybe had a little too much drink? You know, I didn't know what it was going to be. And yet, we had people calling in. We had calls all night. We were on the air until 10 p.m. We had people who were calling in their 60s and 70s who were reminiscing about 1969 and 1984. And at the same time, these guys are calling in to talk about, I remember 84. And Vanderbilt needed this welcome to the 21st century moment. This is going to sound rude, but it's not. Most of Vanderbilt's fan base, the true season ticket holders, if you go to a game, the people that go through and through to Vanderbilt, win or lose by 20 to ETSU, they're there. Beat Alabama by 5, they're there. That group of Vanderbilt fans, they remember the Eisenhower administration because they're people from Nashville who support the local team. You know, hey, that's our team through and through. I went in 69. I went in 84. I went to Memorial. That's the Vandy fan. Because in today's era, my generation, Ian's generation, I've lived in a proliferation of cable television in this society where if you want to root for another team, you can watch any team's game. It's not hard. Back then, there were a couple of games on TV, and I'm talking about back then, a couple of games on TV. It's why Notre Dame absolutely ruled the country because they were on TV, and then you had your local team who you could go see or listen to on the radio. My generation never experienced that. We could watch pretty much any SEC game we wanted to. Even the old, Ian, I don't know if you remember this, the Jefferson Pilot game of the week on Channel 14.
For sure.
I mean, it's so when you're not winning through the Woody Woodenhofer years, may he rest in peace, the Bobby Johnson years, James Franklin, he obviously did well. And then the Derek Mason years in the early part of Clark. When you're not winning, it's hard to get people to invest the time to support your team because, again, I went to college at Louisville. I root for Louisville. I mean, my focus is there. And I think there are a lot of people around the country that feel that way. So while I was incredibly happy for Clark Lee on Saturday and all the players, especially, I mean, I don't know, Diego Pavia. I mean, this guy, he's
wild, isn't he?
He's the best Vanderbilt quarterback of my lifetime. And that includes Jay Cutler, who was drafted in the first round and obviously had a decade-long career in the NFL. Diego Pavia is a better college quarterback than he is. I mean, it's the best college quarterback I've seen at Vanderbilt. And he is a dog. And I'm happy for Candace Lee, who, if things didn't go well this year, I mean, I think she was prepared to go to bat for Clark Lee because of how much she believes in Clark Lee. But now she's not going to have to do that. Everybody knows Vandy's got it going on. They just beat Alabama. But I really feel great for the Vanderbilt fans who are local Nashville through and through. That's their team. The people that lived in Nashville before the median house cost $1 million, when the median house cost what? $150,000 back then? Maybe. Because they've been through it. They've been through it on the football field. They've been through it in basketball. Baseball's been good and they've enjoyed it. But I was excited for those fans who are Vandy through and through. My old neighbors, two of the greatest people you will ever meet in your life. Vandy through and through. And then I thought about the 20-year-old kids marching down the goalpost to throw them in the river on Broadway, because that's an experience that they'll have that will tell them what is possible at Vanderbilt forever. And it will remind them and should remind you that every dog has its day. Every single dog has its day, and Saturday was Vanderbilt's day. Now, it is Clark Lee's job. That's something I'm going to talk to him about when he joins the show. It's Clark Lee's job to find a way to carry this momentum forward, not just through this season, but to continue it on so that when Vanderbilt wins a big game, it isn't such a big deal that, oh my God, did you just see what Vandy did? And it'll take time, and it'll take more victories like that in order to get it that way. And who knows if it will or it won't. But again, Saturday was Vanderbilt's day. And I couldn't have been happier for Vandy. I grew up a Vanderbilt fan. I will confess right now, I'm not the biggest diehard Vanderbilt fan. But boy, I was yelling and screaming on Saturday watching the game. There have been some great Vanderbilt moments over the years. They got 2 baseball titles, wins over Tennessee in football. You know, the big James Franklin one where Derek Dooley got fired the next day. There was the basketball win over number 1 Florida when Kevin Stallings ripped the ball away from Joakim Noah. There was the number 1 win over Tennessee when Tennessee, for the first time on a Saturday night, Tennessee becomes the number 1 team in the country by beating Memphis at Memphis. This was the Memphis with Calipari and Derrick Rose, and they beat them. And then they come to Nashville on Monday, and they get beat. And that was a special moment. But I got to say this one was right up there towards the top. And it's a game that every Vanderbilt fan and even non-Vanderbilt fans will remember forever. It was a special game. It was special for Clark. It was special for Pavia. It was special for the SEC to prove, hey, this league, anybody can really beat anybody. We mean it. Anybody can beat anybody on any given day. But I think it was really special for the Vanderbilt fans that have stuck through this thing through and through, and the Vanderbilt fans that will be talking about this 30, 40 years from now. 615-737-1025. That's the phone number, 615-737-1025, which is our phone number if you want to weigh in. Secondly, and I think this is a major story about Vanderbilt in general and everything else. In order to get others to believe, you first must believe in yourself. And I think that what happened on Saturday is not just a blip, but it is the culmination of that belief. And it's a belief I couldn't be prouder of the person who had it. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. Congratulations again to Vanderbilt. What an awesome victory. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game.
Congratulations, first of all, and we're going to need at least one new goalpost.
Well, I think that's a good thing, and I'm imagining that Candace will come up with the funds for that one because it was worth it. And I don't know, I wish I could have pressed pause, on that last snap of victory just to feel the energy of the stadium and the excitement of a big win. That's the dream. That's what I came here for, and it's probably taken longer than I expected, and certainly we're not done. We got a long road ahead, but to savor that for the short time I was out there meant a lot to everyone who's put a lot into this.
That was Clark Leon with Kevin Ingram after the game. And it's funny because I heard multiple times, I think it was the TV broadcast, I think it was the interview with Kev, where Clark Lee was almost apologizing. Like to the fan, like I expected this to happen sooner. It's here we are in year 4, and I expected this to happen a while back, that we would be beating Alabama and we'd be one of the top teams, but it's great that it happened. Dude, it takes time. Trust me. Again, I think at other colleges it might be a little different, but he was like apologizing because of, I think, the weight that he's felt to do this, because that's what he said he wanted to do at Vanderbilt. And I talked to Clark Lee after he took the job. I played in a celebrity softball game. He was the coach, and we were in the dugout for probably an hour just talking, he and I. And I gained an immense amount of respect for him over that time period. And I remember telling him and saying, I don't know if it can be done at Vanderbilt. I don't know if it can be done. And I don't know if it can be done if you're the person to do it, but I think you've got your head in the right place. I was talking with a buddy of mine who was a former Vanderbilt athlete, former Vanderbilt coach, and we were talking yesterday. He was coming over to help me with a dog crate that we still couldn't get built, but that's a different discussion. But we were talking about, I was like, we were talking about Clark and because after last year's debacle, 2-10, they didn't win an SEC game. I remember just how disappointed I was for him. And I kept saying last year, I'm like, I know he's a good man. I think he's a good coach. I mean, Ian, how many times do we talk about, I think he's a good coach. I don't know why it's not working out for him, but it's not working out. But I think he's a good coach.
Seems like one.
He's a good coach, a smart guy. He's a good guy. He's thoughtful, all these things. But again, in football, either you win or you don't win. And we all know that that's what this is all about. And Clark Lee, after last year, completely reinvented himself. I mean, they were expecting to have the season they've had so far this year, an exciting season with the Virginia Tech win and the Alabama win and the Missouri close loss. And he was expecting to have this season last year. They returned a young quarterback who had been very impressive in A.J. Swan. They had won some games at the end of that season. The Kentucky game comes to mind, where you could feel the positive momentum. They won 5 games in 22, and they were ready to knock the door down in 23. I went to practice on a Saturday morning, watch a team practice, talk to Clark afterwards. I mean, I was very excited. We did the show from the Vandy facility the Friday before the season opener in week 0 against Hawaii, and they beat Hawaii. And it was like, okay, like there's a lot of positivity there. And then it was the season from hell. And then the transfer portal opened, and they didn't have a quarterback. And I'm sitting here thinking, Clark's a good guy. I think he's a good coach. Like, I've been around him enough to know like what a good coach is. And I'm like, he's a good coach. Why is this happening? But what does Chris Sanders always say, Ian, when it comes to these kind of situations and these moments in time? How many choices do you have?
You have 2 choices.
And what are they?
You can get better or bitter.
Bingo. And a lot of these coaches, it's real easy for a lot of these coaches today to get bitter, to blame society, the transfer portal, NIL. It's this guy who had an injury. It's this guy's parents are screwed up and screwed him up. It's not my fault. I know my way works. Just go look at Dabo at Clemson. You think Dabo realizes he's the problem? A lot of these guys won't change. Texas A&M just paid Jimbo Fisher $1 gazillion because their oil boosters realized Yep, I think old Jimbo ain't going to change. And they would be right. But Clark Lee said, I've got to change. I think Clark Lee had probably spent the last 7 years, 10 years before he got the Vanderbilt job thinking, when I become a head coach, here's how I want to run my program. He became a head coach. He implemented how he wanted to run his program, and it didn't work. And instead of, I know my process works, I know he went back to the drawing board and said, okay, we're changing. We're changing. In comes Jerry Kill. In comes Tim Beck. In comes Diego Pavia, who I think is the straw that stirs this drink. Clark takes over the defense. A lot of times when I see coaches that'll just fire coordinators and just replace them with two guys and not really, when I see that, I think, oh, yeah, this coach, he's on his way out. It's getting. Clark reinvented himself. And this, again, this is a lot of things. This is something that a lot of coaches won't do. A lot of radio hosts won't do it. They get terrible ratings. Everybody says, hey, man, it'd be good if your show was better. And it's like, no, my show's good. It's just, and then there's a list of reasons why the show gets no ratings. And, usually that's, quite frankly, kind of bullcrap. Clark Lee is a winner. He could lose every game at Vanderbilt. And just what I know of him, I'd still tell you he's a winner. Like, if it didn't work out for Clark at Vandy, I would tell my buddy who's the athletic director at Louisville, and boy, do we need help on defense, I'd pick up the phone and say, go get Clark Lee to run the defense, because I know he's a winner. But again, winners don't just go out there and just roll the ball out and win by 25 points and knock off the number one team in the country. And that's not what happened. That's not what Nick Saban's career was like. At some point, you have to look in the mirror, and you've got two choices: get better, get bitter. Everybody would say you want to get better, but most people get bitter. Not Clark Lee. And that's why, as happy as I am for Diego Pavia, who, again, to me, he is the straw that stirs that drink over there, and he is a superstar. And I don't know if there's an NFL conversation around Diego Pavia, but I think there's got to be at least a little bit of a discussion around Diego Pavia in the NFL. But for me, I just couldn't be happier for Clark because he's adjusted. The society of college football, the way that it used to be, like what it used to be in college football when he got the job and what it is now, two totally different landscapes. And he's managed it. He's taken advantage of it for Vanderbilt's sake. And when somebody does something that they don't want to do, but they know that it's for the greater good, oftentimes we call that sacrificing. When somebody does that, when somebody is willing to roll up their sleeves, when they are able to put the work in, when they are able to look in the mirror and say, here's where I need to improve, and then positive results follow, that's when I get really excited. And for years and years and years, Vanderbilt has been the same old Vanderbilt with the same old mentality, and we're not going to try to get better, and we're not going to do that. We just think that it should come to us. And that's not how they operate today. That is not how Clark Lee operates. That is not how Tim Corbin operates. Look at Tim Corbin. I've said this. Old dogs sometimes don't like learning new tricks, and Tim Corbin came out and fired the hitting coach, and he said, hey, I got to change because it's not working. To me, that's where you earn respect, is when you go in there and say, hey, we're changing things up here. We've got to. And he did. And I'm proud of him. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We are to your phones, but I know Nick Saban's not coaching Alabama anymore, but this win is not Nick Saban free. We'll explain. 615-737-1025 here on our program. We are going to spend some time talking about that Vols loss, which I'm sure that Vanderbilt fans probably won't be upset about either. But, Ian, it's not a Titans Monday because the Titans had the bye.
That's correct.
Should we call it a Vandy Monday?
I'd say that's fair.
It's a Vandy Monday, 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. And be sure to join me, Chris Sanders, and D. Mace live at John Bon Jovi's, JBJ's, this Sunday for the award-winning pregame show from 9:30 to 11:30 as we get you set for the Titans and the Colts. The award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon.
Pavia's in the pistol. Running back is Cedric Alexander. The snap. It's a play action. Pavia rolls. No one is there. Steps up. He's going to chuck this one deep toward the end zone. And it is caught. Touchdown. Vanderbilts. 36 yards. Diego Pavia. He chucks it deep and hauls it in. What a play for Junior Sherrill. Oh, goodness, on 4th and 1. The Doors come through against the tie.
I got to tell you this about Vanderbilt. You know, as I'm watching the game, and I did not sit down to watch the Vandy game on Saturday. Like, it wasn't like, oh, hey, let's not run any errands because Vandy's on. In fact, it was the opposite. I was like, the Vols are playing at 6:30. We went to PetSmart. We went, a handful of places during the first half, and I'm sitting there in PetSmart, and I've got the game on my phone because all of a sudden Vanderbilt has a pick six, and they're making this a ball game, and I'm like, oh, Vanderbilt scoring some points on Bama, and it took a little time. But that fourth down pass, that's when I was like, oh, my God, Vanderbilt might actually have the stones to win this game. So Nick Sabin is not the coach anymore at Alabama. We all know that. And if there's one little minor part of this that would hurt a little bit, it's the fact that it would have been nice to do it against Nick Saban. That's okay. I like Nick Saban. I know Nick Saban. I don't know him that well, but I think I know him well enough to call him a friend. Nick Saban did the single dumbest thing to him that he could have done. If you remember, Nick Saban has an infatuation with rat poison. This goes back to 7 years ago when all of a sudden on the podium, he decided to snap at the media, something that Saban did many times while he was a head coach at Alabama, and blaming them for their quote-unquote rat poison.
So offensively, the first few drives to the last few games have been pretty effective. I think three and outs in the first 4 drives tonight. What do you think was the issue there?
I think we've already said what the issue is. Their front seven, we couldn't run the ball effectively. We just didn't play as well tonight. You got to give them a lot of credit for it. So, I'm trying to get our players to listen to me instead of listening to you guys. All that stuff you write about how good we are and all that stuff they hear on ESPN, it's like poison. You know what I mean? It's like taking poison, like rat poison. All right. So I'm asking them, are you going to listen to me or are you going to listen to these guys about how good you are? All right, just like your question right now, if we get stopped 3 out of 4 times, like that's a bad thing. We're not going to beat everybody 66-3.
That was the birth of the rat poison. Now, after they beat Georgia a couple of years ago in the SEC title game, Nick Saban said, you guys have been giving us tons of yummy rat poison that we've been eating up because, again, the media wrote off Alabama, and here comes Alabama, and Saban's using that to motivate his team. Ian, I think we did this long enough with Floyd. Not to say that everything Saban thinks Floyd's going to think or everything that Belichick thinks Floyd would have thought, but I think we've done this long enough to know that those guys are cut from the same cloth, right?
Probably fair.
So I know, I listen to Belichick, and he does a show with Pat McAfee, and McAfee asks him about the Colts defense, and Belichick doesn't criticize the Colts defense outright, but he says, when I was coaching, what I wanted to do was I wanted to make sure we had a plan B, and if Indianapolis doesn't get a plan B next week, then it'll be the same thing. He didn't say they screwed up, but he said they screwed up. Saban's the same way. The first week he was doing College Game Day, Saban got mad that he hadn't watched tape and he was making picks on games. It's like, hey, what the hell am I doing? We had to fight that battle with Floyd for years. During COVID, we got Floyd to do a 2020 mock draft, and oh my God, was it like pulling teeth. I haven't watched all the film. I don't know how to do. So I feel like I've got a grasp on it. A couple weeks ago, Nick Saban went on the Pat McAfee show before Tennessee, Oklahoma, and he was talking about the atmosphere Tennessee was going to have, previewing the game with Pat McAfee, and out of nowhere dropped this nugget.
I mean, when we played at Tennessee a couple years ago and got beat up there, that was about as wild a situation as you're ever going to get in. Huh. But the only place you play in the SEC that's not hard to play is Vanderbilt. Because when you play at Vanderbilt, you have more fans there than they have. And that's no disrespect to them. It's just the truth. Hey, when we played in Nashville, we had more fans, Alabama fans, than what they had Vanderbilt fans.
Let me say this. There is no doubt in my mind, even though Nick Saban's not the coach, it's not Nick Saban's job to get the Alabama players to focus during the week. Paul Feinbaum's raising a huge stink because Kalen DeBoer went on his show on Wednesday and was talking about the Georgia game on Wednesday after they played on Saturday, and he was saying, Nick Saban would have never done that. Jalen Milroe was on SportsCenter on Thursday talking about the Georgia game on Saturday, and he said Nick Saban never would have allowed that. And so it's not Nick Saban's job to get his team to focus, and it's not Nick Saban's job to not tell the truth, and sit there and worry about what's going to happen to give the other team motivation ahead of Alabama. He's not the coach. And yet I feel like I know these guys well enough, just having worked with Floyd, that it burns Sabin right in his cornhole, that he probably said something that was used against his team and it ended up coming to bite him in the butt. And I feel confident in saying that because I know, I could just imagine. Ian, could you imagine if Floyd had said something, just in passing on the radio show, just a comment, and it could have contributed to the Titans losing a game?
Probably not. No, that'd be hard to imagine.
He's
very careful. Very careful.
Oh my God. He could have. Oh my God. Could you imagine? Floyd says something, it goes viral, and the Titans lose because of it. And after the game's over, the other team is trolling the Titans saying, yeah, tell that old man GM that they can. Oh my God. It would have been the greatest shame of his 6 years he was here at 1025. The biggest shame. So I know that Nick Saban is feeling like he let his team down because of what he said 2 weeks ago. I know it. That he's sitting there thinking, oh my God, what did I just do to hurt my team? I mean, look, it's not his fault they lost. He's not the coach, but he's going to feel some sort of responsibility for what he did. And here's the best part about it. College Game Day, which I never stopped watching College Game Day over the years, but I never was excited to watch College Game Day lately. College Game Day has been taken up 3 notches since they've added McAfee and Sabin. Now, I think Sabin is 15 times more interesting and draws me to the TV more than McAfee, but McAfee gives that show some real juice. You still have the warm and fuzzies of seeing the Corso and Herb Street relationship, and Corso still putting on the headgear and whatnot, although he wasn't there this week. But McAfee, he works the crowd and he gets the crew all riled up. And, Reese and Desmond are fine. I could, whatever. But Sabin is great on that show. I know that show with McAfee and Sabin, it's not there yet, but I think it's got the potential to be like TNT's NBA show. Just kind of the way as long as you keep it real. I am convinced on Saturday they are going to give Nick Saban the business for what he said on the McAfee show. And the fact that Vanderbilt trolled him immediately as soon as it was over, running it on the Jumbotron. And it doesn't matter that Nick Saban was right. Everybody knows Nick Saban was right about that. But it's just the fact that Saban said it, and then Alabama, for the first time in 40 years, lost at Vandy. And I do take a little joy. As much as I love Nick Saban, I do take a little joy that I know that in his heart, he feels at least 1% responsible for Alabama's loss on Saturday. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025, and we will get to some of your Vandy phones here in just a second. Ben says, Nick Saban wouldn't have said that if he was still the coach, and I bet a small part of him is okay with the new coach losing. I don't think so. And I'll tell you a couple reasons why. Number one, I don't think that Alabama hired Kalen DeBoer independent of Nick Saban. Like, I don't think that that Saban went to Greg Byrne and said, I'm retiring, go hire whoever you want. Or that Greg Byrne was like, okay, coach, best of luck. I'm going to go hire a coach. Don't call me. I don't want your opinion. I mean, I'm sure Saban was involved in the pick of his successor. And Kalen DeBoer is a good coach. Like, I know that they lost to Vandy. Got it. But he's a good coach. He's won everywhere he's ever been. I think Saban feels downright shame because a lot of those guys are his players and his recruits. And I think he feels downright shame that he decided he was going to be in the media to stay in the game, and he was going to do that like a lot of these guys, and it took him 6 weeks, and he's already hurt his former players. So somebody texted this in on Saturday, and I meant to go look this up over the weekend, and then I didn't. But somebody texted this in Saturday night when I was doing our special 2-hour Stillman and Company program after the game. And they said Alabama's press conferences for the week did not mention the word Vanderbilt one time from the media or the coach. It was basically a post-week presser from the Georgia game. They were looking straight over the Vanderbilt game. And I said at the time, like, I cannot imagine that Kalen DeBoer didn't get up there on Monday and say, this week we're getting ready for Vanderbilt, and that's a good football team out there. They just took Missouri to the wire. And again, we now know Missouri kind of frauds, but at the time they're in the top 10. They just went on the road and took Missouri to double overtime. That's a good football team. They beat Virginia Tech, and we know Virginia Tech's a good football team. So that's a good football team we're getting ready to play. They got a great quarterback. They're well coached. Even if you don't believe it, that's what you say. I can't imagine that Kalen DeBoer wouldn't have said that. That he wouldn't have gotten up there. He's won big games in his life. But I didn't go check it after Saturday. I didn't go check to see what the Monday press conference was from Alabama. But if it's true that they did not say a single thing about Vanderbilt, that's a huge red flag. Like, that's a no-no. Like, even me. Like, even today, we have Clark Lee on the program. I'm going to ask Clark Lee, hey, man, Kentucky on Saturday. Like, I know it's great you beat Alabama, but, how do you make sure that this team doesn't inhale too much rat poison before Kentucky? Because, I don't even know the spread. It wouldn't surprise me if Kentucky's favored in Lexington on Saturday. So, if that's what happened, I'll be stunned. 615-737-1025, more your phone. Stillman and Company. Again, the greatest win in Vanderbilt history. I'll say it. Vanderbilt football history. Unbelievable. Will continue. Stillman and Company. This week's Nashville's best deal is Fog Street Lawn Club. Get half off a $30 gift card now at thegamenashville.com/deals and dive into the ultimate rooftop experience. British lawn bowling, scrumptious bites, and premier soccer pub vibes. Get half off a $30 gift card to Fog Street Lawn Club now while supplies last. That's Fog Street Lawn Club, thegamenashville.com/deals.
Saturday is just an absolute massacre for the top 25 teams, highlighted obviously by Vanderbilt. Not the same old Vanderbilt. No. Brand new Vanderbilt who beat Virginia Tech, took Missouri to double overtime, cleaned house. Diego Pavia is an absolute beasta. Vanderbilt beats Alabama, shocks the entire world. Obviously, Alabama, just a few days removed from the big win over Georgia in the SEC Mega Bowl, has to go into Vandy, a place that has been said to be not that hard to play in. There was a lot of Alabama fans there. There was a lot of Vandy fans there as well. And they're experiencing something this year with this quarterback, this coach, and potentially NIL that are making them much better on the football field in a city that could be sold to people easily in recruiting. Nashville is awesome. Yeah. And Nashville was on display, obviously, immediately after this game. Different streets, different parts of the town, and even a river that is 3 miles away. It was carried by the students. They'll be fined $150,000, I think, for storming the field. Old buddy standing on top of the upright, directing traffic is obviously hysterical. But that son of a went through the stadium. It went down Broadway. Cops are trying to shut it down. I don't think so, brother. We just beat Bama. That thing's going right by Tootsie's. That thing's going right by Aldean's. That place is going by churches. That place is going by Dirks. It's going by Blake Shelton's. And then it's going right into a river as the students look along and celebrate. That's what college ball is all about. Yeah. Congratulations to Vandy.
Do you think Pat McAfee knows that Lainey Wilson now has a bar down on Broadway? Do you think he knows the updated map up there on Broadway? By the way, apparently UK is favored. Somebody texted in and said UK was favored by 10.5. Somebody else saying UK is favored by 13.5 on Saturday. 13.5 points against Diego Pavia. I might have to play the disrespect card there. Daniel texts in. Let's get to some of your phones. By the way, Brandon says on the YouTube chat, he says, let's get to your guarantee that Tennessee wouldn't lose. That's coming up at 3 o'clock.
Oh, yeah, I got a text about that. I got a text about that.
I said to tell Connor, I told Jake to tell you that I was going to guarantee a Tennessee victory. We'll get to that at 3 o'clock.
I'm seeing Kentucky minus 14.
14 against Diego Pavia?
That's what I see.
After what they did to Alabama? Really? 40 points? Ay. Daniel says, my dad was a Vandy season ticket holder for 40 years, and I grew up going to every home game. My dad passed away a few months ago. Daniel, I'm sorry. I'll keep you in my thoughts. And I think he pulled an Angels in the outfield move on Saturday. Let me say this. Not that this has anything can even compare to probably how that felt, grieving for your father who was a diehard Vandy fan through and through, and that, they turn around and they beat Alabama. And I think there may be something to that Angels in the outfield theory that you bring up. But, Ian, I was thinking about Floyd over the weekend and all the things he said about Vanderbilt over the years. Mm-hmm. He said if he was commissioner of the SEC, he'd kick Vandy out of the league.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that. Like, I was thinking about that, and I was like, man, how would he react to Vandy? After the season they had, Vandy going out and beating Alabama. And it's too bad it wasn't Sabin, but Sabin talked that trash leading up to the Vandy game, so Sabin deserves it. 13.5. What are we doing? 13. If I was setting the line, I would go Vandy minus 2.5. Now, I haven't watched a ton of Kentucky play this year, but I'd go Vandy minus 2.5. 13.5. Well, I guess when I asked Clark, how do you keep the mindset on Kentucky as you get ready for the week? I guess all you got to do is mention the point spread, which used to be a no-no, but now that's kind of how they operate. One texter says, what are your thoughts on Malachi Moore showing his rear end in multiple ways? He threw his mouthpiece. He kicked the ball. When getting subbed out, he refused to go. When the DC walked on the field to get him, he turned his back and walked away. How do you feel about that? I mean, I heard that Damian Harris, the old Alabama running back, he said that it was straight BS what Malachi Moore did. I mean, I appreciate losing with passion and wanting to win, but at the same time, that's the kind of guy I don't necessarily want to be around because it means that you're unstable. The thing that's crazy about emotions in sports, are that we want these players to, feed off of emotion and use it to motivate them. And then we see some negative emotions and it's like, well, you have to be able to clamp that down. Well, that's why the guys that are good at this make as much money as they do, because not everybody can do that. And I think to me, there's a certain element of win with class, lose with class. And so I thought what Malachi Moore did, I just thought that was kind of childish. And I'm not sure that that's what I believe, is necessarily losing with class. It's like some people are like, I want my players to be fired up. Well, do you want your quarterback to be so fired up when they lose that he won't shake the other quarterback's hand? Because I think there's a certain element of this where it's like, no, you got to take your lumps when you lose too. And everybody needs to see how you process a loss and the fact that, hey, I don't accept it, but I'm also not going to act like a crybaby all of it for whatever it is. Apparently the Vandy fans were going wild after the game. They should be allowed to do that. But one other thing on the goalpost, which is Keith in Bowling Green brings up something that I haven't thought about. He said, I think the 2012 SEC tournament win over Kentucky would be the number one event because UK went on to win the national championship that year. Winning the SEC basketball championship cannot be bigger, in my opinion, than winning 2 baseball national championships. And I don't think it's bigger than football. Again, I watched the Today Show yesterday because Willie Geist is a Vandy guy and he hosts the Sunday Today Show. Apparently, Willie wasn't on because Willie was at the game on Saturday and they were showing videos on the Today Show. They led off the Today Show talking about Vanderbilt's win and showing Willie Geist hugging Candace Lee at the end of the game. And they were making a big deal about that. They weren't talking about that when Kevin Stallings was crying into the towel. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. The guarantee. I guaranteed the Vols would win. I was stunned by how inept the Vols looked on offense, defense, special teams, and coaching on Saturday. And I do have an apology that I have got to give. This is for all the people out there that say I never admit that I was wrong. We'll do that next. Let's talk Window Nation. When you use Window Nation, you will not have to ever apologize to anybody because your windows will look great. You'll get a great deal, and they will do a fabulous job taking great care of you and getting you the right windows and lowering your energy costs with their energy-efficient windows. I can promise you that. I know that because Window Nation came out to my home for an estimate, the free in-home estimate. They came out to my home and they told me not to buy new windows. And I said, you know what? You guys are honest people. And I've always felt that way. So there's tons of companies that are offering deals in order to get you to buy windows. I can't tell you about them, but I can tell you about Window Nation. And right now with Window Nation, you buy 2 windows, you'll get 2 free. Plus you'll pay nothing for 24 months. Again, nothing for 2 years. Buy 2 windows, get 2 free. It's as simple as that. Hurry because the sale ends October 31st. So schedule an in-home estimate right now by calling 866-90NATION or by visiting windownation.com. Again, that free in-home estimate with those honest experts. 866-90NATION, windownation.com. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Clark Lee will join us at 4:20 today. But after the Vanderbilt game was over, there was another game that we all had to watch. The game of the night, Tennessee and Arkansas. And I guaranteed that Tennessee was going to win on Friday. So, Ian, I am here to be a man and apologize and admit I was wrong. Something people seem to think I'll never do, or I'll never say, or I'll never. I don't tell the two things that people say that are just blatantly not true. Number one, they'll say Jared Stillman makes things up to get listeners. That's not true. You know, I may think crazy stuff, but I think it. I don't just say it. I'm not one of those people. And number two, people say, Jared Stillman will never admit when he's wrong. I was wrong through and through. And I owe an apology to Robbie Stanley and Joe Rexroad. And I'm going to tell you why. Because on Friday, you know, look, there's no question in my mind that Robbie openly roots for the Vols and Joe roots for the Vols in the closet. It is what it is. Joe will say he's objective, but I think Joe's got a little Tennessee orange blood in him. And they were scared. They were pooping their pants on Friday morning. And I'm listening to the show, and I'm listening to them start talking about Jalen Green this and Bobby Petrino that and Arkansas this. And I'm like, guys, this is a different Tennessee team. This isn't the Philip Fulmer Tennessee team that would go out there and lose games they shouldn't. And then, you know, we'd all sit there and blame the Randy Sanders or John Chavis or whomever afterwards. This is a different Tennessee era. This is a coach that doesn't have a drop of Tennessee blood in him. He is not susceptible to the problems that the Derek Dooleys and the Butch Joneses and even the Philip Fulmers were. Don't worry about it, guys. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. They'll go to Arkansas and win. And I'll be honest, I kind of kept an eye on it during the first half, but I was on the air as we had a special programming show, you know, a Stillman and Company after the Vanderbilt win. But then I watched the second half, and I kept waiting for UT to pull away. And I kept thinking, you know, UT's gone on the road, and they haven't played very well, but they're still going to win. And then when they win, I'll sit there and tell Robbie and Joe and everybody else, see, they didn't even play well. And they went out there and they won. What's that tell you? But they didn't. In fact, even at the end of the game, when Arkansas got the ball, Herbie said, or Tennessee had the ball the last time before they gave it to Arkansas, and Arkansas scored. Herbie said on the TV broadcast, he goes, Arkansas's offense with the backup quarterback in there is so inept that Arkansas is going to have to score on defense because there is no way that they're going to be able to score on offense. And I'll be darned if it wasn't one run up the middle and all of a sudden Arkansas was in position to win the game. So I owe Robbie and Joe an apology because I didn't think that was going to happen. I guaranteed it wasn't going to happen, and it happened. I was wrong. I'm disappointed in the Vols. And now I'm starting to have a theory here. Just like we had the old Mike Vrabel special where the Titans would pull out the inexplicable one week only to lose the inexcusable the next week. We have what I'm going to call the Josh Hypel clunker. Once a year, Tennessee goes on the road and they play a team that they have no business losing to, and they'll find every single possible way to lose the ball game. Last year, they went on the road to Florida. And I remember telling people, guys, Florida is awful. Billy Napier is a terrible coach. Graham Merritt is a terrible quarterback. This is a horrible team. Like, get off your fuzzies about it's a rivalry game and Florida always plays us tough. And I'm like, don't worry about that. Florida is horrendous. They'll crush them. And Tennessee went into the swamp, and they absolutely laid an egg. It was inexplicable. Kamal Hogan, ran into the guy instead of tackling him, and the Florida guy ran into the end zone for a touchdown. That Florida team was horrible. And then, of course, the South Carolina team in 2022. The Dabo Sweeney, they're at home flipping burgers thinking they're in the playoff, and then all of a sudden they don't show up and they end up sitting at home. And that's exactly what happened. Tennessee went on the road to South Carolina, a team that didn't belong in the game with them, and South Carolina crushed them. And then Hendon Hooker got hurt, and that added insult to injury. And this week, Arkansas. A disgrace on both sides of the ball and disgraceful coaching. That team wasn't ready to play. Their game plan was horrific. Hey, we're going to play conservative ball no matter what. Why? Well, this could be, and then the defense. When the defense had to get a stop, this is supposedly a good defense. I thought that they were a great defense. And when you've got to get a stop at the end of the game against a backup quarterback, if you've got a great defense, you have to get the stop. I remember Coach Shoup when he would come on the show, and he told me as a defensive coach that once you figured out what the game was going to be, you adjusted your expectations. And that even if it was going to be a shootout game, a 44-42 game, you would ask of your defense not, hey, we need you to start stopping them every time down, but you'd ask of the defense, I need you to make me one play. You guys may give up 3 more touchdowns, but if on one of their last possessions, you can get us a turnover, or you can get us a pick 6, or that's all I can ask. Vandy gave up 35 points, but they got the big play they needed at the end of the game when they had the strip sack of Jalen Milroe. Tennessee, once you decided this was going to be a defensive game, and it looked like a defensive struggle, which is a shame because I don't think Arkansas's defense is very good. But once you decided this was going to be a defensive struggle, now the defense has to understand we can't give up the one big play that puts Arkansas in field goal range and costs us the game. Just inexcusable. And so I've decided this is a once-a-year thing for Josh Hypel every season. An SEC road game that they have absolutely zero business losing and then turning around and losing. I can't explain it. I can't explain what happened last year at Florida. I can't explain what happened. 2022, the Vols were so buttoned up. They went out, they beat Alabama at home in a game that I didn't think they had any chance to win. They went to Georgia and they got beat handedly, but I mean, again, it wasn't like they didn't show up. And then all of a sudden they play South Carolina. They got South Carolina and Vandy on the schedule. And all you've got to do is beat South Carolina and you're in the playoff. You don't have to play in an SEC title game. You don't have to beat a Georgia or an Alabama. You're in the playoff. And they lost that. They just didn't show up. And again, it's not like this happens 2 times a year, 3 times a year. This is a once-a-year thing. The Josh Hypel clunker. And I don't know what it is when it comes to Hypel, in which they have one game like that, what feels like every single year. And he's been doing it long enough now that we can say this is a thing. Just like we had been, Mike Vrabel had been coaching long enough that we had kind of gotten used to the everybody's hurt against the Houston Texans, but they'll win that game. But then they'll go on the road and they'll lose to Zach Wilson and the Jets. They'll beat the Rams the week after Derrick Henry gets hurt, the eventual Super Bowl champion Rams, and then they'll lose at home to a terrible Houston Texan team with Tyrod Taylor at quarterback. It was just the inexplicable, and it felt like it happened. The Vrabel special. It became a thing. It was real. And I am starting to think that the yearly Josh Hypel SEC road game clunker is a reality. It's a thing. And it's a thing until it's not. And so whatever it is that is happening to this ball club once a year, every year, on the road, in the SEC, whatever it is, he's got to get figured out, or you're never going to win a national championship. Because the road is too hard for these SEC teams that don't get to bye. Like if you finish 7th and you make it into the playoff, you're going to have to, I guess you would host the first game, and then you would have to play in the semifinal. Like it's too hard. So Josh Hypel, I mean, he's got a program that I think, between the NIL money they have and the way he coaches and the way the game's trending, like, I think that they should be competing for national titles sooner rather than later, but not if you can't go take on that Arkansas team sucks. That offense is terrible. Their defense gave up 30-something points, I think, in a half to Oklahoma State. They suck. And Tennessee still found a way to lose. So, Robbie, Joe, I apologize. You guys were right to crap your pants and be worried about your Vols. And I'm sorry for your sake that they lost. 615-737-1025. Now, the other thing that really got up my craw Saturday night, which, again, a lot of people are talking about the quarterback, but the coach is not innocent in any of this either. We'll get to that next. 615-737-1025. Let's talk Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love my friends at Hiller. They take great care of my home. They were at my home last week. They can do the exact same for you. And I know they'll do a great job because, again, they do a great job for me. And it is spooky season, and everyone is thinking about Halloween. And this month, it's all treats and no tricks with my guys at Hiller. During their spooky good fall giveaway, get a free Blackstone griddle, a free Solo stove, or a Yeti Tundra cooler with select home upgrades. Or enjoy $99 specials like an HVAC tune-up. Visit happyhiller.com for all the details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I got to believe they were extremely excited about what they saw from Vanderbilt because they're proud Vanderbilt supporters, also proud supporters of the Preds and of the Vols. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today.
Yamaliaba. This is going to be the last play of the game. Scrambles and is shoved out of bounds. No time left. Arkansas pulls the upset. Last play, for all the poise that Nico has, he's sort of lost track of the situation there, Kirk, with the clock winding down.
Yeah, but remember I talked about the three defensive backs. They kept these three back to take away any of the vertical shots, and then they had the underneath tight coverage. He's trying to get the ball to the left here to 19 stays. Watch how he's looking that way initially, and he comes off of it. That's just look at his head. Looks. Now he's got to try to make a play. There's no one open downfield. So now he's thinking, somebody work with me. Somebody work with me.
Got to let it go, though.
Yeah, there's nobody there. Yeah, of course, you got to let it go. Young guy lets it just kind of, he was so locked in on that left side. There's nowhere to go with the ball. And, yeah, he should throw it up, give somebody a chance. But he's a young guy. He'll learn from it. But really, this is about Arkansas. It's about what they did at home tonight, pulling off this upset.
Herbie. I mean, look, I love Herbie. He's a good man. But even Chris Fowler's like, I mean, he's got to throw the ball, right? Like, well, he's trying. He's looking at this left side. He's waiting for somebody to come open. He's trying. And Fowler's like, he needs to throw the ball, though, right? Like, at some point, he's got to throw it. Yeah, well, he'll learn. But let's not take away from Arkansas. Herbie, if you don't know that ball's got to come out, you shouldn't be in the game. It's plain and simple. I don't care if it's college, the NFL, I don't care. If you cannot sit there in that moment and say, I have got to throw this football, then you need to sit on the bench and they can put somebody else in there that knows the rules. But when I saw that happen, I knew that Nico was going to be the one that gets most of the flack at the end of the game because that was the final play and that was the craziest play. That was the most wrong play that we saw in that stretch. But I think we have to ask, when's the coach going to manage the game correctly too? Like, where did these people, both Nico and Josh Hypel, where did they learn how to manage the clock? And again, everyone's going to make the big deal about Nico running the ball out of bounds because it was criminal. But Josh Hypel had 2 timeouts to start that drive, and they threw a ball down the field 40-something yards, and they complete the pass. And Josh Hypel thinks with a freshman quarterback on the road at the end of the game that Nico should be able to just manage the next play. I'm like, I see the ball that gets completed down the field. I'm not stupid. I know the rules. I know the clock stops under 2 minutes when you get a first down. That's college. It's not the pros. I got it. But they complete a pass 42 yards down the field. And yes, the refs have to spot the ball before they start the clock, and the refs have to run down the field too. But with 2 timeouts, you're asking Nico with 30 seconds left, and I don't exactly know the time on the clock. I know it was 35 when they snapped it. And I don't know exactly the time on the clock. I think it was 59 when they threw it, and it was 35 when they snapped it. You're asking Nico to run everybody up to the line, to then check what the defense is doing, look over to the sideline, see what play they're running, call it out so that everybody knows what to call timeout. What are you trying to take those timeouts home with you? You needed a play to get into scoring range because you're down by 5. So you need to at least get close enough that you can take shots to the end zone or shots to the sideline that can get you in a 1st and goal from the 7 or something like that. Or with 2 timeouts, again, you can still throw the ball underneath. And I would understand if Nico was Hendon Hooker 2 years ago, who's a 5th-year quarterback, who's running that 2-minute drill, who throws the ball 42 yards down the field and is able to get everybody up on the ball. But instead, Josh Hypel thinks that Nico should be able to run this. First of all, he treats Nico like a baby, with the conservative way that they played. And then he turns into treating him like he's Peyton Manning as a senior. And it's like, Josh, timeout. You cannot take those timeouts home with you. I've always joked about, like, if I was an athletic director, and I'd never do this because this is how you really piss off the coach, but I mean, I would walk in with like a giant thing that just says timeout on it. Like the Monday after a coach loses a game because he's afraid to call his timeouts, and then he ends up with 2 timeouts or a timeout at the end of the game. I would take it with me, and I would drop it off on his desk and say, here's the timeout you didn't call on Saturday. I'm glad we have, do we have a spot for it on the wall somewhere so we can hang our timeouts that we didn't use? I mean, that's what the timeouts are for. And while, again, Nico has to know, that ball has to go into the end zone. Like, there's no excuse for you trying to run that ball out of there unless you think you can run it into the end zone. And not a single person in the world thought that Nico would have been able to run that ball into the end zone. While that's one part of it, Hypel really hurt their chances to win by not calling that timeout. And I thought that was basic coaching. Like, he thought they were going to complete a 42-yard pass, not substitute, because you don't have time to substitute, can't substitute, you're going no huddle, 42 yards down the field, not substitute, run up to the line, call out the play, look at the defense, because, again, it does you no good if you can't look at the defense. If you just get everyone on the ball, 52, hike, and all of it, you don't know what the defense is doing. It could be zone, it could be man, you don't know. So he's got to look at the defense. And so now he's a young quarterback, and young guys like to hold the ball or maybe run the ball or panic a little bit. Timeout. You just hit a 42-yard play. You've got positive momentum. You're now in scoring range. You still have another timeout. So let's say you take a sack, or let's say something like that. You still have the timeout. Instead, Hypel thought that Nico could run this like a veteran quarterback and run a play. You know, if you were so worried about the second timeout, spike the ball. But you can't let 20 seconds run off the clock when there's only 35 seconds left. And you can't ask a freshman quarterback to be able to run this like a fifth-year senior. So I'm sorry. And I know, look, Nico's getting paid, and I know Nico's not playing for free. Like, he's getting paid a lot. And there are high expectations when you come in recruited as highly as he was and paid as much as he was. Like, I understand there are expectations, and Nico's got to meet them. But the coach has to do his part too. Like, if that's the NFL, there's no doubt on a 42-yard gain, you bang the timeout. But in college, you can do it too. Just because the clock stops doesn't mean it's a license to not call a timeout. To make sure that you've got the guys on the field you want on the field, make sure you have the play you want called, make sure the quarterback knows what you want to do. Like, timeout, Josh, it's not that hard. I was disappointed by that. One texter says, preach, Jared. He coached horribly. Another texter says, I think he lets them party too much on the road. I wouldn't know anything about that before I make that accusation. But my question to you would be, then why doesn't it come up in the other road games? It's just once a year. They have a road game. Tennessee does. They go on the road every year, and they just clunk one away. And I don't know it. And I don't know how they do that. Like, I don't know how all of a sudden they every year find a way to lose a game that they have no business losing. Again, this is the Josh Hypel, Mike Vrabel special. We're calling it the Josh Hypel clunker, because I don't think that Hypel wins a game every year that he absolutely positively shouldn't win. Do UT, Ian, off the top of your head, did UT win a game last year that we said that they had no chance to win, or that they absolutely positively couldn't win, like some monumental victory?
No, not last
season?
year. Not with Milton. No.
Yeah, I can't think so. So, again, they didn't have any of that, so it's hard for me to think that they would do that. But, again, it's if you want to win a national title, those things can't happen. You can't have those things. Boy, what a bad loss for UT. I do wonder this. I remember 4 years ago, it's funny, I moved houses. And the night that I moved houses, let me say this. I've got, everybody knows I'm with TriStar Moving, and they do a great job, and it's a great process. But I think every single person on the planet hates moving, and I'm certainly one of them. And it's like an all-day thing, and and I remember when I moved in 2020, and I remember finally like sitting down and being like, and I didn't have any TVs up on the wall yet at the new house, but I had like a little mini projector screen, which I still have today and still use. But I moved and I had a giant white wall upstairs, which ultimately ended up being replaced by a huge TV. The huge TV that I love to watch. And when ESPN decides to give me split screen on Monday Night Football, I go crazy because I didn't buy that TV to be small on purpose. But so I had this mini projector up against the white wall. It looked great. And I was so tired from moving and everything else. And I was sitting down watching the Vols just get housed by Arkansas. And that was not a very good Arkansas team in 2020. And I just think it's funny that here we are 4 years later, just move homes again, watching the Vols in Arkansas. And it's almost like this Arkansas loss might have been more painful for the Vols than that one because the Vols knew they had a bad team in 2020. I think we know Tennessee's got a good team this year. And yet, clunker, which was so disappointing. I also laughed. The guy on News 2 that does the weekend news, he was, Ian, I don't know, did you stay up for the news after the Vols game on Saturday?
You know what? Maybe for a little bit. Yeah, I don't quite remember what happened in the news, though.
So when they went to News 2, they had like a news guy doing the news, and he talked about the Vandy game first and then brought up the UT game, and he said it brought up the UT game, and after he talked about the Vandy game, in which he said Diego Pavia, it's Diego Pavia, but he said Diego Pavia, and then he basically finger wagged the Vols. He was like, and the Vols just lost on the road at Arkansas, and if they want to make it to the college football playoff, they're going to have to play better on offense, defense, and not turn the ball over, and they also might have to coach better. More on that in sports. Coming up next on News 2. I laughed so hard. I'm like, here's just a run-of-the-mill news anchor, and he's just like, hey, Vols. Just wagging his finger.
He must have went
into the camera.
He must have gone to UT. Must be
No,
a fan.
I could tell. I mean, I assume he didn't go to UT. I don't think he's a sports guy. Like, I think he's one of those sports guys that like casually watches a game, but is not a sports guy. Like when Emily Proud used to do the Saturday news, I can tell you right now, Emily Proud knew what she was talking about. I don't think this guy is Emily Proud. And I did laugh. I mean, I just laughed so hard. You guy just wagging his finger at the Vols. For some reason, I just thought it was hilarious. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025 here on our program. We're to your phones next on the Vols loss at Arkansas. Vandy on the table as well. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game.
full concept read. He ended up scrambling off of it. End of the day in that scenario, you got to get the ball up and give one of your guys an opportunity to go make a play. Nico, just like me and just like our football team, which is that we had played better. It's that situation. You can't keep the ball in your hands. You want to give somebody an opportunity to go make a play. He's disappointed with it, but he's got to come back and bounce back from it. He's played way too good not to respond the right way, and I know he will.
I don't know I'd say that Nico's played really, really well. Again, expectations are everything in life. Nico threw for 300 yards and a half against Chattanooga. Other than that, he hadn't thrown for 300 yards this season. I don't know that I'd say so far. Nico's played really good ball. I'm not sure I'd say that. Not given what the expectations were with Nico and the money and the hype and the recruiting and all of that. I'm not sure I'd say that. Now, I was reading The Athletic. They guess they have their playoff models and all that kind of stuff. And apparently, Tennessee is now listed as a probably in. Texas, Alabama, and Georgia are listed as definitely in. Ole Miss and Tennessee are listed as probably in. A&M, LSU, and Missouri are in the mix, and they say keep an eye on Oklahoma. Where's Vandy? Where's Vandy? Well, we need to have an investigation at The Athletic on that. To your phones are driven by WillsCountyHunter.com. One person did text me, and they criticized Hypel for not calling the timeout at 35 seconds, but they said, but he'll run the ball at 17 seconds. I think that was a botch snap. I think that the ball hit Nico in the hands, and I think the running back picked it up and ran with it. I don't think it was a designed running play. Also, I love how Josh Hypel at the end of the game is like, Nico probably wishes he could have that one back. You need to worry about what you can have back from the game because I didn't think he was very good. Chase and Wife Blood says, and our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. The good thing is the Vols only dropped to number 8. If they win out and only lose to Georgia at Georgia, they make the playoffs and more than likely don't have to play in a pointless SEC championship game now. I still kind of value an SEC championship, and you're guaranteed into the playoff if you play in the SEC title game. Here's what I'll say, though. You still have to beat Bama. It's if they only lose to Georgia at Georgia, they're still probably in. Okay, well, you have to beat Alabama. And if you think you had a bad day, Alabama beat Georgia the week before. We know Alabama's good. Alabama's quarterback is good. Alabama's number one receiver is 17 years old, and he would be the number one receiver on the Tennessee Titans today at 17 years old. We know Bama's good. You still have to beat Bama. And there's no guarantee that you can do that because I don't know if you guys watch how Vanderbilt's quarterback played on Saturday. Nico is not doing what Diego was doing. So let's not get too caught up. I think if you're Tennessee, you have to look at your team and say, hey, we got to get back to the drawing board and figure out if we can get more out of this quarterback. Matt says, Josh Hypel has never been that great of a coach. He can recruit good enough athletes and runs a pass-heavy, fast-paced offense that only works because college defenders are terrible overall. He can't manage the clock at all, and it shows multiple times each year. We usually just win because of the overall college football product is atrocious, so the good athletes that he gets are better with the UT SEC name value to cover how horrible he really is. So I'm not going to sit there and say that. I'm not going to say that Josh Hypel's a bad coach because I remember what Tennessee was before Josh Hypel got there. Okay? Tennessee was bad before Josh Hypel got there. To the point that me, somebody who grew up rooting against Tennessee, actually kept saying on the radio, it's time for Tennessee to be good again. It's time for Tennessee to get back in the mix so that their games against Alabama and Georgia and LSU and everybody else, those games matter the way they mattered when I was a kid. I will say this. I did take great joy in Tennessee's terribleness for a while, but it got to a point. So I know that Josh Hypel's got Tennessee back to respectability to the point that he's a good coach. But I am going to be watching this clock management a little bit more closely because I thought his clock management on Saturday was horrific. And Blake Bedingfield's brought this up about Brian Callahan at paulkaharski.com. And it's something that because he said it, it just kind of clicks in my mind a little bit more. Something I've been thinking about. The offensive coordinator / head coach guy. Sometimes it's hard to manage the clock and manage the game and call the plays at the same time. Surely it's hard. I mean, that would almost be like if I was running the board at the same time I was doing this show. And I do wonder if it's hurting him when it comes to those strategic moments. I do wonder if that's a little bit of a problem they have. I can't believe they lost to Arkansas.
I mean, it's a road game at night in the SEC.
Yeah,
Stuff like that
Arkansas
happens, though.
sucks. Yeah,
I mean,
Arkansas.
You just look down the street.
No, that's like a once in a lifetime thing. That's not hey, things happen in the SEC.
Hey, you never know. On the road, SEC at night, evening, you never can tell.
Oklahoma State didn't have that problem in the second half against Arkansas. They scored on every possession, I think. And again, with Hypel, why is it one game every year? It's one game with him. And I don't know what it is.
This wasn't as bad as the South Carolina thing, was it?
Well, I don't think that team was as good.
Yeah, maybe not.
Rita texts in and says, from Rita to the Stillman show. Had a 10-leg parlay, and the UT game was the last leg that busted the bet. Cashed out early on a 4-0 team. Who would have guessed? Never would have guessed to go with the Vanderbilt upset. I'll say this. If you're a Vanderbilt fan, and I've told the story about growing up a Vanderbilt fan and how, again, all these fan bases, you know, if you're an Auburn fan, it's like my daddy and granddaddy watched Auburn every week, and my daddy and granddaddy watched the Gators together. But like growing up a Vanderbilt fan, we watched Tennessee all those years because Vanderbilt wasn't very good. If you're a Vanderbilt fan, the fact that your team beat Alabama and then 2 hours later, the Vols lost to Arkansas in just horrific fashion. I mean, you can't ask for better nights. I mean, you really can't. Some pretty impressive stuff. 615-737-1025. Okay, I got a bunch of jumbled up NFL thoughts. So we're just going to roll through them, and we're going to do them next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on our program, plus Clark Lee will join the program at 4:20. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game.
with the game in the balance. Snap, place, kick on the way. From 59, it is good! With zeros on the game clock. That's how the Houston Texans win, and they do so in regulation.
The Houston Texans found a way to beat the Bills yesterday. It looked like early on they were going to run the Bills out of the building, and they end up with a 59-yarder from Kyemi Fairbairn in the Houston Texans, what I'm calling their Bruce Matthews uniforms. After Bruce Matthews narrated the video about the Houston Blue in H-Town, which, again, if I owned the Titans, I threw a fit about this on Friday, Ian. I said, if I owned the Titans, I'd call Bruce Matthews today, and I'd say, go be a Texan. You're done here.
Oh, wow.
We're not going to unretire your number or take you out of the Ring of Honor, but don't call us. You go be with them. If you want to go pump up their uniforms, go be with them. We don't want you. And eventually, one day, we'll get good, and don't call us. That's what I would say. That's how disrespectful I found it. But I did watch a lot of NFL football yesterday, and while, again, we got a ton of college today, and Clark Lee will join us in the next hour, let's get to kind of the top takeaways from week 5 of the NFL season while the Titans were on their bye.
Number 1.
Houston's legit. Houston is legit. They are no worse than the third best team in the AFC. Kansas City, Baltimore, and we know the difference between Baltimore and Kansas City is a toe. Baltimore, Kansas City, Houston, line everybody else. Houston's going to win this division. They're going to have this division wrapped up by Thanksgiving. They're going to win this division. They're going to make it to the AFC playoffs. And I would just say this. If I was a wild card team that ends up making it and gets Houston, I wouldn't want to play them. And if I was a division, if I was Buffalo, if I was Cincinnati, and I think Cincinnati might be done after they couldn't catch a snap. But if I was one of those teams, I wouldn't want any part of the Houston Texans. C.J. Stroud wasn't his best. Nico Collins got hurt, and they still won the game. The Texans are legit.
Number 2.
Derrick Henry still got it. I know for 2 years I took phone calls on this program. Jared, you have to admit he doesn't look the same anymore. And I kept saying, it's the line. They've got a left guard who weighs less than he does. And you've seen this offensive line and how bad they are. This offensive line for 2 years was so bad that it made the best running back in the NFL look like he was falling apart, like he was on the downhill. Then he goes to a good team, and all of a sudden, he's the king again. Derrick Henry was never washed, folks. He still got it, and he delivered a victory to the Ravens yesterday.
Number 3.
Indy and Jacksonville. Watched a lot of that game yesterday. They are both awful. And we'll talk more about Indianapolis throughout the week ahead of the Titans playing them. But, I mean, there is nothing good about that Indianapolis Colts team. Nothing. They can't play defense. They're worst in the league. They don't run the ball, even though they can. They're 12th in rushing in the NFL, 21st in attempts. Their coach is a moron. Flacco is better than the parts around him, which is saying something because Flacco at this point in his career is a journeyman backup. And Jacksonville on the other side, they're awful too. I mean, it was watching two bad football teams. You fit right in with the two of them. I mean, they are terrible, and I really think Indy's a mess, and it's not getting better because it starts at the owner, and he's not going to change. So I think there's at least a little good news as Houston's legit. Indy and Jacksonville both stink. I watch that game. They stink. Lawrence stinks. The Colts stink. It's ugly.
Number 4.
The Jets stink too, and they need to fire Robert Saleh. They need a spark. You know, remember when Mike Vrabel switched the quarterback and he went to Ryan Tannehill and he said at 2-4, he goes, "We just need a spark. You know, I'm just looking for something to spark the team." And he made the quarterback switch. That's what the Jets need to do with the coach. Now, Ian brought up a great point during a break, which is if they fire Robert Saleh, then they maybe have to make Nathaniel Hackett the head coach, and that's not a good idea. So come up with a plan B. But they've got to they've got to get rid of Robert Saleh. I mean, he's no good. It's not going to change. This is your last crack at it with Aaron. Get somebody else in there to coach him and see if you can get better results. Saleh is not the guy. He's got to go. He should have been fired at the end of last year. Do it now. Maybe you have a chance to save your season.
Number 5.
Ian, I'm feeling pretty good about my Sam Darnold comeback player of the year prediction.
Another win.
Sammy D, 5-0. And I remember the early talk with Sam Darnold was he's going to be the starting quarterback in Minnesota because over J.J. McCarthy before J.J. got hurt, because the beginning part of their schedule was so brutal with San Francisco and Aaron Rodgers in London and Green Bay on the road. And Sam Darnold just keeps winning. Houston early on. And Sam Darnold's not perfect. I mean, the Vikings have a good team, which is why I knew Sam Darnold was going to have a good year. Because he's got a good team around him. He's got the best receiver in the NFL. He's got a good coach. He's got a good defense. And Sam Darnold, to me, he's one of these guys who, like Jared Goff, like Ryan Tannehill, like Kirk Cousins, like you give them a good team and he'll win you games. Which is why I'm not sure that is valued at $55 million a year. Because, again, well, okay, if I don't sign Tua, if I don't sign Trevor Lawrence, if I don't sign these guys, I don't have to go to C.J. Beathard. I can just go get the Sam Darnolds. And there will be a guy like Baker Mayfield 2 years ago, like Sam Darnold last year. There will be a guy this year who's a backup somewhere next year or who doesn't get re-signed by his current team, who's out there who can be this kind of quarterback. It might be Daniel Jones, who won a game against Seattle yesterday. But Sam Darnold feeling good about comeback player of the year through the first 5 weeks.
Number 6.
And finally, I don't know how many of you guys stayed up to watch the Cowboys and the Steelers last night. Ian, I was not one of them.
Me either.
Did you watch any of the game last night?
Yeah, I did. I watched, I don't know, maybe till about 10:30, 11.
I watched about a quarter, and I don't know what time that was.
I think the game started at 8:45.
I felt so bad for NBC because NBC, you know that at the beginning of the season, all the networks, specifically NBC and Fox, were begging for Steelers Cowboys. Like that is a made-for-TV game. It's like Chiefs Cowboys is just TV's written all over it. And you know they wanted Steelers Cowboys, and then they get this massive delay. And while I appreciate a good Steeler Cowboy game, I wasn't around in the 70s. It's not like it's the end of my life that I didn't watch the end of that game yesterday. And I know NBC must have taken it on the chin with the lightning delay. Nothing they can control. But I'm not staying up to watch that game. So I saw that Dak came back in the end. Dallas won the game. I saw CeeDee Lamb and Dak got into it on the sideline or something like that. Whatever. I'm not staying up for that. Those were my week 5 takeaways, and we have the Chiefs tonight going up against the Saints. 615-737-1025. Vanderbilt with the win and the upset of the century so far for Vandy football. But coming up next, Nick Sabin knew this would happen, even if he said the opposite. We'll get to that coming up next here. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. It's a Vandy Monday on the program after Vanderbilt took down number 1 Alabama on Saturday. Head coach Clark Lee will join us in 20 minutes right here on the flagship for Vanderbilt Athletics, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And I couldn't help myself. You know, a lot of these politicians, I don't know if you guys have been getting the ads. You know, I like the Atlanta Braves, so when I'd watch them, there was an ad every inning for president or whatever. But these political ads are running all the time. They're all doing news interviews, and it wouldn't surprise me if we end up having to have somebody on or something. I don't know. But one thing I've noticed over the years of following politics is that usually the thing that a politician gets up there and says, and if you vote for this person, they will. A lot of the time, they're basically telling on themselves. The thing that they're telling you to be afraid of, they're doing themselves. It's happened so many times. And it reminded me of something on Saturday. A couple of years ago, Nick Sabin made a bunch of headlines in college football when he went after Texas A&M for all the NIL money they had and all the players they were buying. Jimbo Fisher went off and had an unhinged press conference, which led to all this Sabin, Jimbo drama, and I'm pretty sure Greg Sankey, but somebody over at the SEC tamped that down. But Nick Sabin started on his campaign against name, image, and likeness in the transfer portal. Didn't like him. Told Paul Feinbaum in 2022, quote, one of the things I'd like to see us to be able to work back to is everything in college football has always had parity, Sabin said. I don't think we have that balance right now, which could affect the parity of college football and college athletics as a whole. I know we've got a lot of good people working on it, and I'm sure they'll come up with a good solution. Nick Sabin was worried about parity in college football. Now, let me say this. Before NIL, before the transfer portal, we did have a parity problem in college football. It was the same 5 teams. Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, and then 1 year with LSU that had an unstoppable team. That was it. And it didn't look like, based on the recruiting rankings, it didn't look like it was going to change anytime soon. Number 1 recruiting class, Alabama. Number 2 recruiting class, Georgia. Number 3 recruiting class, Clemson. It didn't look like it was going to change at all. And so here was Nick Sabin with his team having dominated college football for 15 years. And he's sitting here telling everybody, well, I'm worried if we don't get this fixed. I'm worried about the parity of college football. But I don't think Nick Sabin actually was worried about the parity of college football. I think Nick Sabin was worried that parity could become a thing in college football. Because all of a sudden, if the Vandys of the world start getting the money that the Alabamas have, and Vanderbilt can go offer a player more money, well, now Nick Sabin's lost his recruiting edge. And I think now we know Nick Sabin's fear of parity in college football. Yeah, the opposite has happened. I think the reason why Nick Sabin said that when he was still coaching Alabama was because before NIL and before the transfer portal, now he had worked hard to make this a reality, but before those things, he had the deck stacked in his favor. And if you've got the deck stacked in your favor, you don't want that to change. The reason we have parity in pro sports is because pro sports, for the most part, is treated like a socialist government. The best teams end up getting the hardest schedules, right? Like Kansas City has to play Baltimore and Buffalo and Houston and every year. The worst team gets the best pick. So if you're Cincinnati and you're terrible, you get Joe Burrow. Congratulations. There are salary caps, though some are real and some are not. Baseball has a luxury tax in which if you spend too much money, it hurts your draft picks. Those are socialist governments. What those do is they basically expect everybody to be 500. And then there are teams that are poorly coached and there are teams that are not. But that's why we have that in pro sports. And that's why the Washington Commanders can be the second worst team in the league last year and be one of the best this year because they got Jaden Daniels. For years and years and years, college sports wasn't a socialist government, but it wasn't even capitalism. It was a caste system. And if you weren't one of those caste members, if you weren't one of the tops of the tops, you either had to pay your way there or cheat your way there. Oregon paid their way there with Phil Knight's money. Other schools might have cheated their way there if you weren't Alabama or you weren't Kentucky basketball. Well, now Vanderbilt has money. And with that money, Vanderbilt went out and they got Diego Pavia. By the way, and I'm going to do this. I'm not a no free shout outs guy. You know, some of these people are like, hey, we don't give out shout outs on the show. You gotta advertise for that. I'm not doing that, Ian. Diego Pavia sent out a tweet like an hour and a half ago. And he said, for NIL inquiries, hit my agent. And I'm going to give away the phone number, 505-544-7267. So Vandy's got money now, and with it, they bought Diego Pavia. And with Diego Pavia, they bought a ball player. And now a team that was never, ever, ever a threat to Nick Sabin just scored 40 points and beat Alabama. Sabin knew his recruiting edge would be hampered significantly because while he was always competing with Georgia and LSU and A&M and Clemson, and, you know, while he knew he was recruiting with the top of the SEC, he also knows Arkansas's got money now. Like Arkansas has as much money maybe as anybody else in the SEC. They've got the Walmart family behind them. Ole Miss, Florida, those schools have money too. And so Sabin's got the boosters exactly where he wants them. They've got the finest facilities, the finest program, and with no transfer portal, Nick Sabin can tell Derrick Henry, you need to sit on the bench. But today with the transfer portal, 4 games in, these guys go to the coach now and they say, I'm out of here. He didn't like that. When it comes to paying the players, he knows there's only a certain amount of money we can give out at LSU. And so if we spend our money and we get the best wide receiver and we get the best pass rusher and we get the best corner, well, that means somebody else can buy the best safety and the best running back and the best right tackle. And he knew it. He knew it. He knew that his days of going out and recruiting the best players and saying, come to Alabama, and even if you sit on the bench, it'll be okay, because it was okay for Quinnen Williams, and it was okay for Derrick Henry, and it was okay. He knew that those days were over. I mean, here we are 5 weeks, 6 weeks into the college football season. Who's the best team in the SEC? Everybody will tell you it's Texas right now. Texas hadn't played Georgia. Texas hadn't played Bama. Texas hadn't played UT. And I can't tell you who that best team is. And the reason why I can't tell you who the best team is, or who the best 4 teams are, or who the best 5 teams are, is because we now have the parity in college football that Nick Sabin was scared to death of. And that's why it's no accident. You know the old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks? That's why Coach K, out. Roy Williams, out. Nick Sabin, out. These guys don't want to deal with NIL and the transfer portal because they had it made the way it was. And now we're starting to see, right now we're in the phase of capitalism in college football. Socialism is when there are real rules and everybody's supposed to be the same, and that's what all these other sports are, the pro sports. Capitalism is the rich get richer, and then the poor have got to earn their way up and everything else. which I think is why we're seeing Florida State and Clemson try to sue their way out of the ACC. But again, I'm sorry. Nick Saban was scared to death about parity 2 years ago. And the parity he was scared to death of was it entering college football. And Saturday proved that it has. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Let's hit them quickly. Adam in Portland is up next here on Vandy. Adam, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, Jared. So my thing, man, and I haven't talked to anybody about this. I'm out of town working, but had the thought in my head the other day. I was like, what if I look up and see the Vandy score and just see them up a couple of touchdowns? What would I think? I swear it's coming to my mind maybe Friday. And I looked up and I saw that they were up 23-14. So I immediately go to Twitter. I saw your post saying that might be the best half of football Vandy's ever played. I was like, oh, my God, what am I missing? So I wasn't tuned in. That's the best sporting event I've ever seen in my life. I have not been able to take the smile off my face since that happened. I'm so happy for Vanderbilt. I've spent a whole lifetime of seeing them get crapped on. I used to watch them when Woody was their coach and they sucked and Bobby Johnson was coach. Everybody just laughed them out, man. Like talking about them, they need to leave the SEC because they suck so bad. Clark Lee needs to get paid, dude. Like they need to lock him up before he does the James Franklin thing and rolls out. I hope he doesn't. Ask him if he's going to do that. But like, what an incredible team, an incredible coach, man. Like I said, I can't wipe the smile off my face. It's the happiest I've been ever with something sports. I'm just so happy right now.
Adam, good call. Thank you. Let's go to Billy, who's up next here on our program. Billy, thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
Hey, what do you say, Jared? Quick observation before my comment. My observation is I listen a lot, don't call often, but there's not too many shows go by that we don't hear the fact that how much you miss Floyd and love him, and we do too. Good. So just to know that. I can't tell you. You don't need me to tell you how exactly right you were with everything you said about parity. You hit every nail on the head. The only thing I would add is that as a fan that throws a few dollars every now and again, it's making it tougher to bet because there's so much parity amongst college football. But I'm a 100% fan of it, and I think it's fantastic for college football.
Thank you for your call, Billy. I mean, we'll see how this new 12-team playoff works. I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of it. We'll see. But does seem to make it at least a little bit more interesting. You know, Feinbaum said a couple of years ago on TV, he said college football is going to try to be like the NFL. That's what they're going to try to do. And that's what they're doing. 14-team playoffs, and everybody's got good players, and you don't know who's going to win. I think that's kind of the hope they have. All right, the man of the hour, Clark Lee, joins us next. Vanderbilt's head coach, 2 days after the biggest win in program history. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 through the game.
He takes the snap.
That's gonna do
it. Vanderbilt
Biggest
wins
win in
it.
Vanderbilt history.
Is this real life? You bet. Vanderbilt beats Alabama for the first time in a generation. The greatest moment in Vanderbilt football history.
Pretty exciting Saturday, wasn't it? Vanderbilt 40 points on Alabama. And every time Alabama punched, Vanderbilt punched back. And we are joined by the man of the hour, the head coach of the Commodores, Clark Lee, joins us now on the program. Clark, I know there were a lot of ups and downs throughout the first 4 years in order for you to get this program here today where you did. But I got to start with this. First of all, congratulations. But I got to ask, when did it start to get real for you? When did you start to sit out there and say, we're going to beat Alabama? When did it hit you? When did it start to become real on Saturday?
Well, you're not going to like my answer, so just bear with me. But it was real to me from the opening kick. Part of it is like, I don't know, man. I love my team. I got a ton of belief. Now we got to play a certain way, and when we've synced up and played like a physical, tough, and interlocked game where all three phases are kind of supporting each other, I think we've been really, really dynamic. And when we haven't, that's where we have the poor performances, which we're capable of too. But for 2 weeks, this team was like so dialed in and excited. In the past, I've had to like really serve as like chief motivator at times when the world tells us we're punching up. With this group, these guys aren't fazed by anything. And so I think they seized the opportunity to have the number one team in the country coming in. We took the field. We had 2 great weeks of prep, took the field with energy and spirit. And I think at the time at which, you always as a coach want to start well. I think it's important to start well, especially in a game of that magnitude. So to be fair to your question, I think as we were driving that first drive and I realized that we're getting movement and we're establishing run, we were able to convert a couple of third downs and protect. That gave me some peace. And then, when we punctuated with a touchdown, I could just sense that this is going the way we want it to go. And obviously we come out in a 3-and-out with a pick six. I think at that point it's like, let's freaking go. Obviously, there's going to be punch, counter punch. There's going to have to be some battle back at times. And against a good team like that, it's not always going to be perfect, but these guys were ready to go from the start.
As a defensive coach, and you're running that defense now, you give up 35 points, but you got the big strip sack at the end of the game. And I was listening to Miles Caper's interview with Kev after the game was over on the postgame show, and he basically said, like, we knew we had to make a play, for the offense, given the way the game was going. You've coached a lot of different kinds of games. Did you say something to the defense on the sideline when you knew that they had the big touchdown with Ryan Williams and then you guys had answered back? Did you say something along the lines of, hey, we need one big play here, or we need to do something to break up Alabama's momentum? What was that like that led to what I thought was probably one of the most important plays at the end of the game?
Well, again, we had talked all week. Part of our big three as a team was this punch, counter punch, which just means like, we have to sync up at the right times. They're going to get their plays. The touchdown to Ryan Williams, if you look at his stat line, I thought we did a good job against them, except for one snap. And the one snap, we played a ton of zone. We knew we were going to have to absorb some yards in the passing game. That was intentional. But the one snap was a third down where we played man, and he made a really nice play on our sideline. Had we been able to down that ball, I think I think we would have been in position to limit him throughout the night. We didn't make the play on the sideline, and he got loose. There's still so many things we want to do better, but I didn't need to give any motivation in that moment. I was, this is what we trained for. I mean, these guys are inspired to play together. Miles Capers is as steady and consistent as any player I've ever coached. And, he went out there and won his one-on-one. He won it emphatically. And then, we train every day to attack the ball in the pocket. And he did just that. And we were able to pounce on it. And it was huge. I think, the 2-minute drive there where we allow a chunk play, we're out of structure. There's some detail in our game defensively that we're still missing that, that's going to be the big push this week, is just to tighten down some of the structural things. But I was proud of the way, once the ball got down there tighter, we forced them into a 4th and inches where they ran a reverse to score a touchdown. We could have been better executing on that snap. But the biggest thing on that drive was we couldn't allow them to get in the end zone in chunks. We allowed them down the field in one chunk, but I think we forced them to line up and snap it a few times. And every second that ran off the clock there got us closer to kneeling out the game. And I was so proud of the offense to go out and finish with the ball in our hands. We have not been able to do that for 3 years. And that to me was a testament to a well-called game by Tim Beck and a gutty performance by our offensive line and running backs. And obviously Diego made a couple plays there too that sealed the deal for us. So a really good team win. Again, that's an explosive offense. Anytime there's 35 on the board, we're not happy with it, but we will celebrate the team win for sure.
Absolutely. Clark Lee's with us on the program. Clark, I know how excited you were for the 2023 season. Like, I knew going into the year how excited you were, thinking what Vandy football was going to be able to accomplish. You guys didn't accomplish that. You won 2 games, didn't win an SEC game, went back to the drawing board. I'm sure it would have been a lot easier if I had told you then, hey, you're going to beat Virginia Tech, you're going to beat Alabama, but you really reinvented the program this offseason, both from a roster standpoint and a coaching standpoint. Take me through that thought process of where you decided, okay, I had these plans for what I thought we were going to be, and now I've got to take a detour here. And what led you to the road that you're on right now?
Well, the starting point, the disappointment at 23, and I feel like, I think one of the things that was hardest for me, and Jared, you know this, I didn't see that coming, and that is a hard thing as a leader to experience. You want to be able to see around the corner, and I didn't do that. What we did in 22 is we improved, and I saw us go from 2 wins to 5 wins and felt like we found some competitive spirit, and we basically doubled down on everything. We also lost a couple of really competitive leaders in Mike Wright and Anthony Orgy that I think did a really nice job of balancing our locker room out. And we kind of overvalued some aspects of our program and didn't do enough to really shift the mentality within. But I thought doubling down on our systems, doubling down on our personnel and trying to bring as many guys back as we could was the formula to go from 5 to postseason play. And obviously I was devastated by the year and really disappointed. I think if anything hit me the hardest, it was there were games where, certainly I can be critical of our systems and our structures, but man, do I want to see a competitive spirit on the field that I feel like reflects me and who I am every day. And to watch, this is the Kentucky week for us this week. A year ago against Kentucky, I felt like we had a team that, that didn't come out to compete. And, you confront those things in the moment, you confront those things in the team meeting afterwards, but if you're confronting them at that point, it's too late. Again, these are things that we didn't see coming. So I learned a lot. I grew a lot from that experience. And it was a matter of me scrutinizing everything this offseason to get it back on the rails of progress. Some of the roster attrition was a product of the fact that we hadn't yet established true systems for supporting the roster with NIL that reflected membership in our league. And so we left ourselves exposed there. Again, I think that's part of the evolution of our program and just the changing landscape and the shifting of the ground under our feet. We just had to adapt or we were going to lose our team. And we did that in time, and a credit to Candace and her help. And, she made some hard decisions, say, we're going to open up some resources to make sure we can retain the guys we need to retain and then add to patch some of the holes that we lost. I think that was the biggest transformation that allowed us to cover some ground or make up some ground was, we retained guys that we had developed over 2 and 3 years that, quite honestly, had we not stepped up financially, we probably would have lost. There was a lot of communication that was going on with them, and that's just the way of the world. I mean, we can't be naive to that. And then beyond that, once we got through that portal window and we started to get out and to look for players to add, when you talk about adding Zaylen Wood, like that was the first, and Zaylen's been hurt, but the first call I got with a portal addition was Zaylen, and watching him play at MTSU was, man, he's so tough. He's physical. You saw him on film against Missouri. You saw him on film against Alabama. He had such a mindset around being excited to come in and do this. You just started to realize this could be so refreshing to our program. Corday Sidnor, Randon Fontenette. I mean, so many guys, Diego Pavia. I mean, on and on and on with these guys that we went out and found that fit the competitive profile of the program we want to build. So that was new to us. And for me, as a team builder and as someone who, wants this program to be developmental in nature, it was going outside my comfort zone, but knowing that's really the only way that we're going to be able to build something that competes over time. And what I learned was that the NIL and transfer portal for Vanderbilt's an opportunity. We've waited too long to participate in it, but now that we're in it, we're starting to close that gap. And my push now is to look at this coming off season when it gets here and to have the same approach that we're going to go out and find the best of the best. We'll add high school players. We'll add transfer players. We'll continue to push for more and more resources because, this is a great opportunity for us to reset expectations here and really shift the narrative that surrounds the program. So Saturday night was a part of that, Jared. I mean, it was like, the culmination of a lot of sacrifice and investment and sometimes some pain along the way, strategic redirections and addition of new staff and new systems. Obviously, our strength coach has been a huge addition, and that's been a huge change internally for us. And so all those things, it wasn't always easy and it wasn't always comfortable, but, it was a product of a group of us sitting in here and saying, okay, how do we do the next right thing the right way and find the path through?
Clark Lee's with us on the program. I know you guys got the last laugh, but I also know that you heard what Nick Sabin said a couple of weeks ago about playing at Vanderbilt. And talking about somebody's fan base or their home field is kind of like calling somebody's mom or girlfriend or wife out. It's something that, it might be a little personal. So I wonder, now that you guys took care of Alabama and played it on the scoreboard after the victory, what were your thoughts at the time? Because I know that if I heard the Nick Saban comments, I know you heard them. What were your thoughts at the time, and what do you feel about them now?
So again, you're not going to believe me, but I'm going to tell you, and I don't think people understand that I am so insulated. I didn't know about those comments until I was asked about them in the post-game press conference.
Oh, come on.
Listen, God is my witness. Now, listen, I did know about the rat traps because they had asked me about that. They had put rat traps in the building or whatever it was. Sure. They had brought that up in my presser on Tuesday. I'll say this. I mean, sure, and I'm going to be real with you because, that's what you expect from me. It does piss me off because this is my place, man. I didn't hear about it before. I certainly would have put that in front of the team had I. I certainly would have brought that to everyone's attention, and I'm sure they all saw it. The team did. One of the things that's important for us, though, is dude, there's so many people out there that want to say something about Vanderbilt. We can't sit here and try to fight everyone that has an opinion or wants to be negative towards our program. We're going to focus on what we do and how we do it. And over time, we're going to earn the respect of the people outside. Certainly, I don't appreciate that being said. And I don't appreciate any time that our program is the butt of a joke. But it's our job to build something that's dangerous. And that's what we're doing. And I think the world found that out on Saturday. And unfortunately, it took us, to Saturday to show that in a full 4-quarter effort. But, we need to double down on the things that got us to that point, because like I said to you earlier, there are plenty of examples of us not playing good football this season. But when we sync up and we have the right attitude and have the focus, we can beat anybody. I have a ton of respect for Coach Sabin, though, and I'll tell you, the one thing I did see on College Game Day this weekend, I happened to be walking in my office, and he was talking about his transition from a transactional coach to a transformational coach. I don't know if you saw that, but
I did.
He mentioned about a win that they had at Michigan State when they played at Ohio State, where he didn't think they could win, but they found a way to do it, and how that became a reset point for him in terms of how he's worked in service of the players rather than in service of himself. And like that, coach has so much wisdom, and I think in his role now, he probably is responsible for more sound bites than he would like to, or that he's comfortable with. But again, I got a ton of respect for him. I don't appreciate what he said. Unfortunately, didn't see it in time to use it as motivation. But you know what, Jared, we didn't need it. We wanted to play for each other, and I think there's some strength in that too.
Clark Lee's with us. Let's say I'm an NFL general manager, or let's say I'm an NFL coach. Let's say I'm an NFL coach that maybe you spent some time with in Los Angeles. I don't know. And I picked up the phone and I called you and I said, Coach, tell me about Diego Pavia. I see all of the things he does on the field. I see how electric he is. I see how his teammates react to him. I see even in the Georgia State loss, how when he's my quarterback or your quarterback, you've always got a chance. Does that translate to the NFL, Coach?
Well, the competitive attitude absolutely does. There's nothing about, and this kid is a pro. I mean, I think the world consumes like his kind of swagger and his edge and his confidence, which is a beautiful part of who he is, and it's an important part of who he is. What I see day in, day out is someone who's so steady and consistent and dependable. He's a leader. He's a vocal leader, but he's also a guy that makes quiet connections in the corners and pulls people in. To the soul of the program. This dude is in the front row, every team meeting, front and center, locked into what I'm saying. After practice, when I call the team up, he's right in front of me, locked into what I'm saying. He carries my message to the team. I mean, he's up here studying film. He's a really smart player. All those things translate. And, it's going to be so interesting to watch him as he continues to grow here and continues to be in big moments on a big stage, because I believe what he's doing is strengthening that resume to get the opportunity. And if he's proven this, this guy was a chip on the shoulder kid from New Mexico that got passed up by the flagship university, went to junior college, earned his way to New Mexico State, ended up leading that program to 10 wins, comes to the SEC and now has done some monumental things here. What he's shown is that no matter where he is, if he's given the opportunity, he's going to seize it and maximize it. And I don't see why he won't do the same thing in the NFL.
Clark, how cool was it to see the hometown support? You grew up here. I grew up here. I remember when you played here, and to see the fans that are Vandy season ticket holders and have been Vandy season ticket holders for 40 years. And we did a 2-hour special on Saturday, and we had people call in that went to the game in 1969. But to also see the 20-year-olds and carrying the goalposts all the way down Broadway and pretty much shutting the city down because of Vanderbilt won on Saturday. And how do you kind of capitalize that support of people in this town that will get behind a winner that maybe didn't go to Vanderbilt or haven't cheered for Vanderbilt in the past and get them on board with what you're building right now?
Well, brother, that's the critical thing is we have to seize the momentum. And, I think there's marketing elements of that. And, there's different things that we need to be doing out in the community right now. My focus and my piece in that is to prepare the team for Kentucky, because as significant as that win was Saturday and as meaningful as it was in a historical context, this is about the program we're building. And for that to be meaningful and significant to us, we need to build upon it and leverage it and have it amplified through the rest of the season. So we'll know more about what that win meant to us as we reflect on the back end of the year. To your point of celebrating with the Nashville community, the Vanderbilt community that so deserves a moment like that, there's nothing that's been more meaningful to me. short of like accepting the position, than knowing that our program was responsible for the joy of so many people. And my primary concern and my primary passion is celebrating with our team and our staff and my family and all the people that sacrifice and invest so much. But, walking off that field and hugging with strangers and, sharing the expressions of love with people I don't know, like, it's a cool thing. And then, on top of that, Jared, our students have shown up every game this year. I mean,
yeah.
I said this before, like, we're a football school now. I mean, these guys are excited about what we're putting on the field. We got to turn the rest of the stadium black and gold, but that student section has been legit. And, they earned the right to have a police escort with the goalpost heading downtown. And it was a nice touch. My goal would be that eventually we get so used to these wins that, we don't need to take the goalposts down. But for Saturday night, that was a special punctuation mark. And I'm so grateful and happy for the many people that shared in the victory with us. And I do believe there were people in this Nashville community that were pulling for us in that game that maybe have never been to our stadium, or maybe have never really paid attention to our program, but they saw something that they liked, and hopefully it inspires them to come check us out.
By the way, somebody texted into the program and said, tell Coach, in case he's so insulated, we're underdogs this week against Kentucky. I heard you mention Kentucky about 6 times. I feel like I'm not going to ask you how worried you are about Kentucky, but I am going to say, how focused have you been on making sure everybody is aware of the task at hand against UK?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, man, I woke up on Sunday and it's like the disease of coaching. I tried to revel in a little more joy, and I just immediately started to get anxious about this week. And not even because the mindset of the team, I'm not overly concerned with, just because I think these guys are so hungry for more. And I just feel like we're in a really good place right now. It's just every week, man. Every week is challenging. Kentucky is challenging. I think Kentucky has evolved and done a great job of making adjustments and adaptations. They're a tough defense. Their offense is starting to kind of sync up here. And so, it's a challenge. Man, you got to go on the road in the SEC and win a game. We're gonna have our work cut out for us. But we talked yesterday in our meetings. First of all, we took time to celebrate the win like we always do, and kind of put a bow on that. We talked about the fact that as much of a great marker it is on our journey, like a little bit of a guidepost, and it shows us things that are possible, that we knew were possible, we finally made happen. That really the meaning of it has to be about how we leverage it and how we carry it forward. So, and then once we finished our practice, I said internally, anything that's not a conversation about Kentucky, we reject. We burned the Alabama game and released it to our past. We're going to be respectful of people who want to congratulate us, respectful of people who want to share their story or their piece of it. But, we let that go in one ear and out the other. And we're focused on playing our best this weekend, which we'll need to, because Mark's a great coach. And that program is like the signature of a builder. I mean, he's kept it, he's built it to competitive. He's kept it competitive, and they'll remember the last time we went up there, right? That was 22. I'm sure he's talking about that. We're going to have to be super focused and play our best ball.
Coach, last one for you. How much joy did you get out of watching Tennessee lose to Arkansas? I'm kidding on that one. Coach, congratulations on what was a great win, and I can already tell how looking forward to Kentucky you are. And I really appreciate you cutting us into your busy schedule with all the requests I'm sure you're getting. And most importantly, congratulations to you, because I know this is not something that just happened on Saturday. And I know how much thought you put into everything you do, and I appreciate it. Congratulations and good luck going forward.
You're the man, partner. I appreciate you. Good to be with you.
Yep, as always, Clark Lee joining us on the program. And again, that guy, I mean, it's funny because he brought up the Nick Sabin thing. And I was listening to that on College Game Day where Nick Saban said, when I was coaching, I actually almost texted Derek about this because this might have been when Derek was there. And Nick Saban was like, when I was coaching at Michigan State, they wanted to fire my ass. And I got out there in a game that I didn't think we had any chance of winning, and we won. And it totally changed how I coached football. And I heard that. And then after seeing what happened with Clark, and I know how Clark coaches football, I absolutely thought about that as, kind of these turning points and where they've come from in order to get to this point. All right, 615-737-1025. More of your phones. 615-737-1025. Plus, Clark said something. He says, I'm not going to believe it. I'm not sure I do. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
I mean, when we played at Tennessee a couple years ago and got beat up there, that was about as wild a situation as you're ever going to get in.
Huh.
But the only place you play in the SEC that's not hard to play is Vanderbilt. Because when you play at Vanderbilt, you have more fans there than they have. And that's no disrespect to them. It's just the truth.
Hey,
when we played in Nashville, we had more fans, Alabama fans, than what they had Vanderbilt fans.
That was Nick Sabin 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, however you want to, really 2.5 weeks ago, however you want to slice it. It was 2 game weeks ago because it was before Tennessee, Oklahoma. And he said to Pat McAfee, everywhere is hard to play in the SEC except for Vanderbilt because we bring more fans than they do. And you heard the crew laughing and all that. So I asked Clark when he was on the show, I said, what did you make of Sabin's comments when you heard them? And what do you think of them now? Because Vanderbilt got the last laugh. I mean, Vanderbilt was putting it up on the Jumbotron. They put a video out on social media. And let me say this. I already DVR College Game Day every week, but I cannot wait until we hear the flack Sabin is going to get from the crew on College Game Day, specifically McAfee. But I hope they don't ask him about it on McAfee on Friday. I hope they wait until game day because I want to hear everybody get into him. Herbie, if you're driving around right now and you're listening and you're getting ready for your NFL game on Thursday, which looks like it might be pretty good. Herbie, if you're listening, grill his ass. Grill his rear end on Saturday about the Vandy comments. And I know in my heart, because I've been around a guy like Nick Sabin, who's very good friends with Nick Sabin, which is why I think I'm friends with Nick Sabin. I know it just burns Sabin right in his keister that he said something that could have been used as motivation. Now, Clark says he didn't see it. He says that if he did, he's like, I totally would have used that as motivation. But he says he didn't see it. Ian, do you believe that Clark Lee did not hear the Nick Sabin comments until after the game on Saturday?
I think I do. Yeah. He was pretty convincing in the interview there.
So
he's not a BSer.
I'm torn. I know. I'm kind of torn, which makes me think that Clark might need somebody in his life. He's got a good PR staff. PR staff at Vanderbilt's very good.
That is a good point the intern has just made. It was not the week before the game.
That's true. It was before the UT
It was
Oklahoma
before.
game.
It was a week before. So this is not like leading up directly.
But we heard it. Like we played it on the show and we talked about, oh man, that's kind of funny, but it's also kind of,
Yeah, but these coaches have tunnel vision. We know that in this season.
It sounds to me, and a lot of dudes that are in powerful positions have this, where people don't want, like, maybe Clark doesn't have somebody in his aura who sends him that stuff because, Clark's getting ready. He's dealing, I think it was the week before the Missouri game. He's worried about Missouri. He's got his own crap to worry about. I don't want to be the one that brings this to him that gets him all worked up. So, Ian, I'm thinking that I might have to appoint myself.
What's that?
The bad news Clark Lee.
So you have yourself a new position? Yeah.
I might have to do it.
Is this like a paid position?
I might have to do it.
Pro bono?
Let me say this. A pro bono. I don't want there to be any. Look, I grew up a Vanderbilt fan. I'm not a humongous Vanderbilt fan. I actually consider myself more of a Clark fan because, I sat with him for like an hour before he'd even coached a game. Off the record, again, it was in the middle of a celebrity softball game I was playing and he was coaching. And I was just magnetized to this guy. And I'm like, this guy, I don't know if he can do it at Vandy because it's so hard to do it at Vandy and everybody knows that. And I don't know. But I'm like, if anybody can, it's this guy. And when it didn't work out last year, with all the excitement they had going into the season, I thought to myself, like, gosh, I know he's a good man. I think he's a good coach. They got an incredibly hard schedule. It's going to be so hard for Vandy, for them to justify, 4 years, no bowl game. Now it's fine. Now he's in the clear because he beat Alabama. They can lose every game the rest of the year. It doesn't matter. He beat Alabama. He'll keep his job. But I knew he was a good coach. Somebody says in the YouTube chat, he swore to God literally. I'm like, that is true. He did swear to God. How could he have not heard that? But I will say this, the one thing that I think he kind of hinted at there, and if I had more time, I would have asked him this, but like I was watching MSNBC this morning and they were breaking down the game. Like they had Paul Feinbaum on. This is the middle of a presidential election and they are putting Paul Feinbaum on MSNBC to talk about Vanderbilt's win. Like at some point, I think there has to be a little bit of this that's like, hey man, like, yeah, it was a great win and we're really proud and it was fun but like we're a football team too now. This isn't like the school of the blind beat Alabama. Like, well, I got it. I know we haven't been good in the past, and I wonder where that kind of rubber meeting the road is. And he said, hey, it pissed me off. Because talking about somebody's fan base and somebody's stadium, that's like talking about their mom. That's like, look, if your mom's 350 pounds, you know it. You don't want to hear somebody else talking about it. And that's what talking about somebody else's stadium. And I'm not saying Sabin was wrong or Sabin should have said it. But it is personal when you do that. And so Clark said he didn't hear it. Somebody's got, the next time something rises to that, we will make Clark aware of it. Ryan in Nashville says, what would Floyd think of Vanderbilt's upset? I know he's looking down from heaven, smiling and laughing and applauding Clark Lee. I don't know what Floyd would have said about it. Nobody crapped on Vanderbilt over the years more than Floyd Reese.
It would have to do something with Sabin not being at Alabama anymore, probably.
Yeah.
And
but then I would have said, but Sabin's the one giving him bulletin board material.
Yeah, no, that doesn't. It's not. No. Well, what bulletin board material? Coach didn't hear it.
Oh, yeah.
So
Floyd would have said that after the fact, after Clark came on the show.
That's
and said
still
that
the coach's job, Kalen DeBoer's, to, weed out the rat poison. And that's what made Nick Saban great at Alabama, being able to not overlook a single opponent week after week.
Well, that's why he'd get up at the media and yell at him.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was Charleston Southern or Georgia Southern or somebody who they played that ran the option. And Sabin was like, I mean, you guys don't remember it, but they came down here. We had a team that every single one of those guys played in the NFL. I think 4 or 5 of them were first-round draft choices, and they ran through our ass like, you know what, through a tin horn, man.
So
and
I think, yeah,
he went crazy about it. But
I think there's some fans that probably take that for granted.
It does sound like I kept saying when Vandy United launched with the money and the facilities and the things they were going to do, I kept saying, I'll believe it when I see shovels in the ground. Because for years I had been told that Vanderbilt was going to update the stadium only to see them never do it. Now, obviously, it's in the middle of a construction zone. That's why they're doing it. I think the reason Floyd was so put off by Vandy was because when he was GM of the Oilers, they played that year at Vanderbilt Stadium. They offered to renovate the locker rooms, to make them NFL locker rooms, and basically said, we're going to renovate the locker rooms, and then when we're done at the end of the year, you guys can have them, and you'll have an NFL locker room. And Vanderbilt said to the Oilers, no, thank you, we're good. And I think he never got over that. And in fairness, he hasn't lived through this era of Vanderbilt where they are spending money. Clark alluded to it. He's like, we got in the game late on NIL. Joe said it, and we played the cut, and we tried to figure it out, and I have figured it out. But apparently Joe said that Vandy had, Ian, you remember this, Joe said Vandy had legit NIL money in the middle of last year, and he said it was a famous sports family, and we were trying to guess who the famous sports family was.
Yeah.
Do you know who the famous sports family is, by the way?
I do not know.
So I may or may not. But all I'll say is it sounds like Clark Lee was able to look at Diego Pavia and say, I want him. I want him.
Just like Jerry.
And somehow got him. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Speaking of Diego Pavia, there's a thought that went through my mind that part of me says, Jared, please. And part of me says, no. This is legit. The internal conflict that I'm having, that some of you are getting really mad about this, but I'm just going to tell you how I feel. We'll do it next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Vanderbilt, 40 points on Alabama. 40. Did you see the Lane Kiffin press conference, Ian? Where Lane Kiffin was taking questions, and they asked, what did the injury situation? And Lane's like, he's listening to the question, but he's looking up, and then he goes, how many timeouts Alabama got? It's like 128 to go. They got one timeout. Say, oh my God. He's like, sorry, I'm this is a once in a lifetime thing over here. Like talking about, he's like distracted watching Vandy in Alabama. So I asked Caroline a question on Saturday after the game. And there was a part of me that said, Jared, don't take this to the radio. This is going to piss too many people off. And then there was a part of me that said, but this is what I think. So I'm going to ask you the same question. I asked Corey Curtis, and I told TD, and I told Caroline, I said, is this too much of a hot take? If I was an NFL team and I had to win a game tomorrow, in fact, the way I explained it to Corey was I said, if the cartel was holding your family and you had to win this NFL game and your two choices for starting quarterback were one, Diego Pavia, or two, Will Levis, who would you pick? That's what I asked Corey. I asked Caroline, I said, would it be crazy to go on the radio and say that, again, if I had to win an NFL game right now, Pavia or Levis, that I would take Diego Pavia? And Caroline said, if you believe it, then I don't think there's a problem with that. And I texted TD yesterday, and I said to TD, I go, is it a hot take that right now, if I had to pick between Diego Pavia or Will Levis to win a game, that I would pick Diego Pavia? And TD was like, look, man, Pavia is one of those guys that single-handedly has changed the college football team. So I'm just going to say this. If I had to win a game, if my life was on the line, if your family's like whatever, and you had to pick right now, even though he has never played a snap of NFL football, I would take Diego Pavia over Will Levis, and I don't think that's crazy. First of all, every single time I've watched Vanderbilt play this year, Diego Pavia has done something outstanding, including the Georgia State loss. A lot of people are on TV saying, how did Alabama lose to a team that lost to Georgia State? And I'm going to tell you how Alabama lost to a team that lost to Georgia State. The same way that team lost to Georgia State, which was Alabama beat Georgia. They thought their farts didn't smell. They thought they could go out there, roll the ball out. Nick Saban's already said Vanderbilt has no fans. They thought they could roll the ball out there and beat Alabama. I have not looked up the Kalen DeBoer press conference, but two people have texted in and have said that Kalen DeBoer did not mention Vanderbilt in his press conferences last week. I'm going to have to go back and look that up. And so, again, Vanderbilt lost to Georgia State, but what they did to lose to Georgia State was they had beaten Virginia Tech. They had beaten Alcorn by about 60, and they thought, our farts don't smell. We're playing Scarbini State, and we're playing them in the old Atlanta Braves Stadium, and we're going to go beat them. And they didn't. But if you go back to that game, and I watched that game, in the fourth quarter, Vanderbilt had a comeback at the very, very end. And Diego Pavia led them. And they scored, and they took the lead, and I believe they had a 3-point lead with like a minute left. And the defense couldn't stop Georgia State. So Pavia went to the bench with the lead. So even in the Georgia State loss, that's like, again, how did you lose to Georgia State? Pavia was awesome at the end of it. Pavia was awesome against Virginia Tech. Pavia was awesome against Alabama. Pavia was very good against Missouri. I'm taking Diego Pavia. Like, if it came down, I had to pick one or the other, it's Diego Pavia. And the reason that I'm taking Pavia, the number one reason, Levis has all the tangibles. He has the size. He has the arm strength. He has the, he's athletic. I don't think he's as athletic as Pavia, but I think he's pretty athletic. But all the immeasurables, how much does Levis love football compared to how much does he love being famous from football? And the processing and accuracy and reliability and those things, those are the question marks that everybody had with Will Levis that dropped him from the first round to the second round. If it was just the tangibles, the arm strength, the size, Will Levis would have gone number 2, number 3 overall in that draft. But it's about more than that. Now, Pavia is smaller, and I'm sure his arm's not as big as Will Levis's, but how many times have we seen Will Levis overthrow or underthrow the deep ball this year? Whereas on 4th and 1, when everybody thinks Vandy's going to run it, everybody thinks Pavia is going to run it, Pavia chucks the ball 35 yards down the field. And the word I go back to is trust. You may think it's too early to give up on Will Levis, or you may think that the Titans, have something there with Levis that they just have to unearth, and he could be a star quarterback. But I don't think you could make the argument right now with me that you trust Will Levis. That if the ball was in his hands at the end of the game and you asked him to do something, that you would be totally confident that Will Levis could go out there and do it. I mean, I don't even think the coach has that kind of trust in Will Levis, considering the fact that he told him against Chicago, just don't do anything stupid and we're going to win the game. And again, he said, yes, coach, and went out there and did the stupidest thing you can do. Although it does seem like Jordan Love did the exact same stupid thing yesterday. You can't trust that guy. Will Levis hasn't done anything to earn your trust. Meanwhile, Vanderbilt threw the ball in a 2-minute situation when Alabama had timeouts at the end of the game on Saturday. They trust Diego so much that they called that rollout and they were comfortable with him throwing the ball. And I firmly believe that if Vanderbilt had given the ball back to Alabama, Alabama was going to win the game. If they run the ball on first down, they lose 2 yards because Alabama knows they're running it. Alabama tackles them right away in the backfield, timeout. Alabama still had 2 timeouts and the 2-minute warning. So Bama's got the opportunity to get the ball back, and they've got an opportunity to get the ball back and still have a timeout with a Heisman Trophy candidate at quarterback, with the best receiver maybe in college football who's 17 years old. So Vanderbilt at this point had 2 choices. Vanderbilt could either run a passing play and catch Alabama off guard and connect on it. But if you miss on the passing play, now you've just given Alabama another timeout. You don't want to do that. So it's a big risk. But because they trust Pavia, they put the ball in his hands, and he delivered the perfect pass right there outside the numbers for the first down. And I think that play essentially ended the ballgame. I don't think you can trust Will Levis to make that play. Even right now, like if you put him on the college field and you were in that situation, I think you would say, you know what, let's run it. Even though it's going to be a tall task to ask our defense to stop Bama again, like let's run it 3 times, use up their timeouts, kick to them, and hope we win the game. But you don't do that with Pavia because you trust Pavia. Would you trust Brian Callahan if you were playing the Chiefs? Because this is the closest thing, that you would have to Alabama. If you were playing the Chiefs and it was 4th and 1, would you trust Brian Callahan to draw up the deep ball for Will Levis to try to throw a touchdown? Like, would you trust Will Levis there to throw that ball? Or would you say, no, let's use Tony Pollard here? So I don't know if Diego Pavia is going to go to the NFL or not. He's 6 feet tall. I don't know if he has the arm strength to play in the NFL. I don't know if he's got, again, what they call the tangibles. I don't know if he's got that to be an NFL player. I know this, though. That dude's a winner. That dude is a winner. That dude is a baller. And again, I trust that dude. 4 times that guy has won as an underdog of 21-plus points. Remember, Steph Curry was too small to play in the NBA. At least that's what some people said when he was at Davidson. So that's the question. If you had to pick right now, Ian, I'm going to put you on the spot. Levis or Pavia in an NFL game right now?
Levis.
See, I knew you were going to do that because I knew you were going to take the safe pick. It's easy to take the guy who's already in the league and say, Levis. It's easy to do that. But Pavia's got something special. 615-737-1025 to your phones. 615-737-1025. I got a feeling a lot of people want to weigh in on this, though I have not checked the text line. And coming up next, the one comparison to Diego Pavia that keeps getting made that I actually really think is a good thing. Like for his NFL potential and future and all of that. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025, 1025, 1063 The Game.
Pavia's in the pistol. Running back is Cedric Alexander. The snap. It's a play action. Pavia rolls. No one is there. Steps up. He's going to chuck this one deep toward the end zone. And it is caught. Touchdown. Vanderbilt. 36 yards. Diego Pavia. He chucks it deep and hauls it in. What a play for Junior Sherrill. Oh, goodness, on 4th and 1. The Doors come through against the tie.
There you go. That was the big Diego Pavia bomb that he threw on Saturday. Again, 4th and 1. And, look, Clark Lee's busy, man. We asked him about 5 or 6 questions, whatever it was. We had a great interview with Clark Lee. If you missed it, 4:30, check it out on the podcast. But let me just say this. There was a part of me that said, as a defensive coach, how did you feel when you heard over the headset, hey, we're dialing up the bomb on 4th and 1. Hey, 2 minutes to go. We're going to throw the ball because Alabama thinks that we're going to run it, and so we got to try to get a first down because a first down wins the game, and they put the ball in Pavia's hands. Again, the question I've asked is this. If Diego Pavia, or if you had to win an NFL game today, the cartel has your family. I feel like that's the most extreme way to put it, and I think we can all live with that, right? We're adults. We don't have to say that that's insensitive or anything. If the cartel was holding your family, and the life of your loved ones depended upon winning an NFL game, who would you rather have, Diego Pavia or Will Levis? And Ian says he'd rather have Will Levis, which I think is crazy. You're putting the life of your family in the hands of Will Levis.
It's either Levis or Pavia. I have no choice.
Pavia, I think there's a chance if Pavia keeps playing like this, which there's no guarantee
He won't make it. He'd get hurt. He won't make it through a game.
But Pavia's never. When's Pavia been hurt this year?
I don't guess yet, but.
Levis played in the SEC and he got hurt.
That's true.
Now the season's not over, but Pavia, he's not hurt. And there was one comparison that a lot of people have made. It's funny. Joe Scarborough on Morning Joe on MSNBC made this comparison today when they had Feinbaum on. And he compares Pavia to Johnny Manziel. And I've heard a lot of people that have compared Pavia to Johnny Manziel. I think it was Caroline was the first person who said to me, she was like, he's Johnny Manziel without the problems. Well, let me just say this. Like, I know Johnny Manziel didn't have a good NFL career outside of the one game that he led the Titans up. But Johnny Manziel, in my opinion, didn't have a good NFL career, not because Johnny Manziel was small. He didn't have a good NFL career because of the problems. And there's no guarantee that Johnny Manziel would have had a good career without the problems, but I would have liked to see it. And again, Johnny Football had a similar game that won him the Heisman in 2012 against Alabama. And so if you're telling me Johnny Football was a first-round draft choice, even with all of the baggage that he had, and it was deep, as we know, I'm not saying Pavia should go in the first round, but I am saying that if he's Johnny Football without the baggage, isn't that something you want to see in the NFL? So I think you guys are crazy if you take Levis, because I don't even know if the Titans beat the Dolphins if Levis stays at quarterback in that game. Ian, if the cartel has your family and it's Levis or Rudolph, who are you taking?
Rudolph.
Okay, so at least we have that. But I think it's crazy. I am Pavia over Levis. That kid, there's something about that kid. Let's go to your phones as promised, 615-737-1025, and our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Charles is up next here on our program. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead, Charles.
Hey, thank you for taking my call. I'll take it one step further. I bet Clark Lee would take Diego over him when they play Tennessee or any other college team.
So you think that he would take Diego Pavia over Will Levis right now in a college game?
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. I think about this, like Clark Lee was talking about on the show about how, Mike Wright was a big leader that they had 2 years ago, and he wasn't there, even though he wasn't playing behind A.J. Swan, and that they doubled down on what worked for him in 2022, thinking it would work in 2023, and it didn't. And they had to make some changes, and he brought up Mike Wright. Well, they went on the road. Vandy did to Lexington. A.J. Swan was hurt. Mike Wright played quarterback, and they beat Will Levis in UK. And so he's coached against Will Levis. I don't want to put words in his mouth. I don't want to speak for him. But there's a part of me that thinks that Clark Lee, he played Will Levis, and Will Levis didn't even throw for 200 yards, and they didn't even beat him. And he's out here. He's got Diego Pavia taking out Alabama. Floyd used to always say this because he drafted Steve McNair over Kerry Collins. And I've heard Bill Polian talk about the same draft. And Bill Polian, who was the general manager in Carolina at the time, which was an expansion team, it was picking 5th, he said whoever Houston didn't take, McNair or Collins, we were taking the other guy. But Floyd was the one who had the decision to make, McNair or Collins. And there were a lot of people that saw the polish of Kerry Collins and said, why would you take Steve McNair out of Alcorn State over Kerry Collins out of Penn State when Kerry is doing X, Y, and Z at Penn State? And Floyd used to always say, the question he had to ask himself was, what would Steve have done at Penn State? And what would Kerry have done at Alcorn State? And there's no way to know. So this is where the GM gets paid the money to envision that in his head and then make a calculated decision. I don't think Will Levis is taking down Alabama. I don't think he's taking down Alabama at UK. I don't think he's taking down Alabama at Penn State. I don't think he's taking down Alabama at Ohio State. And I certainly don't think he's taking down Alabama at Vanderbilt. Now, do you think that Diego, like if you would switch Diego Pavia and Nico Iamaleava on Saturday, and who knows how good Nico's going to be, but if you would switch them, UT wins the game. I don't even think it's close. One texter says, did you forget that your Johnny Football lost to Georgia State 3 weeks ago? And again, he gave them a lead under 2 minutes and the defense couldn't hold. He didn't get the ball back at the end of the game. That's how you beat those guys. That's how you beat Tom Brady. That's how you beat Mahomes. You beat Mahomes by not giving him a chance at the end of the game. If you give him a chance at the end of the game, you lose. That's why Vandy was so aggressive on Saturday when they had the ball with 2 minutes to go, because they knew we can't give the ball back to Jalen Milroe. So you can tell me, well, they lost to Georgia State. Right. And Diego gave them a lead with a minute to go. The only thing I guess he could have done better is he should have, fallen down at the 1 yard line and then waited and run another play. So there was only 5 seconds left. Diego was awesome at the end of that game. One texter, Trent, says, one of these guys has actually won NFL games. That's who I'm going with. Okay, well, I mean, Washington had Sam Howell, who had won some NFL games at quarterback, and they had the second pick and decided to draft Jaden Daniels, who hadn't won an NFL game. Now, if they had the same logic that you had, that Joe Rexrode has, that I think Ian probably has a little bit, which is, who gives you a better chance to win a game? Well, I'm going to go with the guy who's won a game in the NFL. Then you wouldn't have had, you would have said, I'd rather have Sam Howell than Jaden Daniels. And I think we all know Washington is pretty happy with the fact that they drafted Jaden Daniels. That's like saying, well, Joe Burrow hasn't won a game in the NFL, so I'd rather go with Mariota over him. I mean, at some point, you got to look at the talent and say, man, this guy, he makes all the throws. Pavia makes the throws. He's athletic. He can run the ball. He's tough. He leads the team. And some of these dudes just rise up in the big moments. Some of these dudes in the big moments, they can't be stopped. And I understand not every good college player becomes a good pro player. Tim Tebow, a great college player, obviously, but not a very good pro player. It happens. I get it. Vanderbilt had an outfielder. We always talk about all these great baseball players Vanderbilt's had over the years, whether it's David Price or Pedro Alvarez or Dansby Swanson or Mike Minor, whomever. Vanderbilt had an outfielder by the name of Dominic De La Osa, like 15 years ago. Guy hit like 30 bombs. Never played in the major leagues. So again, there are good college players that don't end up being good pro players. It happens. But at some point, like, I do think that the cream rises to the top in these games. And like Jaden Daniels just balled out last year. Goes to the NFL, balls out because he's a really good player. Steph Curry at Davidson. I mean, I remember watching Steph Curry play in college. When they went to the Elite Eight, they lost to Kansas. It was him and two other dudes on the team and nobody else. And Steph Curry could not be stopped. You could not stop Steph Curry. I remember telling my dad, I'm like, this guy for Davidson never misses a shot. And then as soon as that kind of ended, there was all this talk about, well, he's too small to play in the NBA, and he won't be able to get his shot off, and he won't be able to. And now he's in the group with Jordan and Larry and Magic and Kobe and Shaq and that group. He's a legend. So, again, like, you guys can tell me that, hey, well, I haven't seen him play in the NFL. Well, no duh, you haven't seen him play in the NFL. But I'm just telling you, like, he wins in the games. And that does matter. And again, let's go back to, like, if we put Diego Pavia on a team with, granted, these aren't the greatest people in the world, but they were pretty good football players in college. Riley Cooper, Aaron Hernandez, Percy Harvin, the Pouncey twins. Like, if we put Pavia on that Florida team, I think that they probably still win national titles. You put Tebow on Vanderbilt, I'm not sure they do. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We're to your phones next on all of this. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
Saturday is just an absolute massacre for the top 25 teams, highlighted obviously by Vanderbilt. Not the same old Vanderbilt. No. Brand new Vanderbilt who beat Virginia Tech, took Missouri to double overtime, cleaned house. Diego Pavia is an absolute beasta. Vanderbilt beats Alabama, shocks the entire world. Obviously, Alabama, just a few days removed from the big win over Georgia in the SEC Mega Bowl, has to go into Vandy, a place that has been said to be not that hard to play in. There was a lot of Alabama fans there. There was a lot of Vandy fans there as well. And they're experiencing something this year with this quarterback, this coach, and potentially NIL that are making them much better on the football field in a city that could be sold to people easily in recruiting. Nashville is awesome. Yeah. And Nashville was on display, obviously, immediately after this game. Different streets, different parts of the town, and even a river that is 3 miles away. It was carried by the students. They'll be fined $150,000, I think, for storming the field. Old buddy standing on top of the upright, directing traffic is obviously hysterical. But that son of a went through the stadium. It went down Broadway. Cops are trying to shut it down. I don't think so, brother. We just beat Bama. That thing's going right by Tootsie's. That thing's going right by Aldean's. That place is going by Churches. That place is going by Dirk's. It's going by Blake Shelton's. And then it's going right into a river as the students look along and celebrate. That's what college ball is all about. Congratulations to Vandy.
That was Pat McAfee. Again, I am mesmerized by the amount of people that would take Will Levis over Diego Pavia. But I texted Caroline and I said, Cartel has your family. You have to win an NFL game, Pavia or Levis. Ian, she says Pavia.
Okay.
I asked the same question, copy and paste text to Robbie Stanley. He says probably Pavia just because I know that Will Levis sucks. Again, the people out there that say, well, Will Levis has won an NFL game before, so I'll take Will Levis. That means that 6 weeks ago, you would have taken Case Keenum over Jaden Daniels.
To win one game?
That's not very smart.
Probably. 6 weeks ago, probably would have said that, yeah.
Right. Your family's in the balance, and you're going to leave Jaden Daniels on the bench? Imagine if that had happened. Again, I don't want to imagine the whole cartel having your family and that kind of thing. But imagine if you had bet on Case Keenum over Jaden Daniels 6 weeks ago just because, well, Jaden Daniels has never won a game. You lost your bet because you bet on Case Keenum, and now you're seeing what Jaden Daniels is doing in the NFL. You'd feel like an idiot. Not saying you, Ian. I'm just saying you in general.
Yeah, well, that's only one circumstance. What if you said the same thing about Caleb Williams or Case Keenum to begin the season?
They got rid of Justin Fields because they didn't want any quarterback controversy with Caleb Williams.
I'm just saying, if you had to start, if you asked the same question, first game of the season, who are you picking? Caleb Williams or Case Keenum to win you a game?
Well, Will Levis won an NFL game, and Caleb Williams is better because he didn't stupidly turn the ball over to the other team.
So it's just, Jaden Daniels turned out to be pretty good, but we would have said the same thing about Caleb Williams. I'm not sure it would have worked out as well.
I'm just saying, and I don't know where the draft gurus have Pavia, but if you're the Titans, you're in day 3 and you haven't picked a quarterback.
He does have some of those intangibles, it feels like,
If I told you right now they're going to use the Malik pick, and I think Pavia will get drafted in like the 5th round or something, but let's say the Titans are on the clock, they use the Malik Willis 7th round pick from the Packers.
I don't have a problem with that. Sure.
Would you be open to the idea? Let's say that the Titans, either keep Mason Rudolph or they bring in some Scarbini backup.
Pull a Brock Purdy.
Would you rule out like a true competition where Pavia drafted in the 7th round can beat out Will Levis based off of what you've seen now?
I mean, I'm not going to rule it out. No.
I don't think the Titans are going to camp next year with Levis at quarterback, but that's just me. Michael is up next here on our program. Thank you for calling, and thank you, Caroline and Robbie, for providing sanity and agreeing with me on this. Michael, go ahead.
What's up, man? I'm Michael from Brentwood, and we can all agree Will Levis sucks. I'd rather have my dog quarterback before I let Will Levis quarterback if the cartel was holding my family. But all right, let's go to Diego. All right, Diego, man, he's good. But I think the whole family would be dead altogether if we let Diego or Will Levis quarterback in the NFL and we put our family on the line, brother.
Well, duh.
but I will say, I'm not a Tennessee fan, But you're comparing him to Nico, man. You said, well, if you put him over there with Tennessee, man, I don't think you can even compare that. I think Nico's just on a different level. But, yeah, we can agree that.
Like a different level bad or a different level good?
A different level good, man. I think Nico is just got some of those things that you just.
Bro, Nico sucked
can't.
on Sunday or Saturday.
No, man. He's a young dude that really
Nico was terrible.
He can make the kid can make every throw.
He didn't make them on Saturday.
He did not, man. He ran it on out of bounds, and I was kind of puzzled by that. But I think that you'll see.
Right. You know who didn't do that? Diego. So I've got a quarterback. I think we can agree. Tennessee has a better offensive roster, even though their tackles stink, than Vanderbilt, right?
I agree.
And Alabama has a better defense than Arkansas. Right?
Yeah. I can say that.
And you're saying right now you'd rather have the guy that scored 15 points or whatever, 14 points, versus the guy that scored 40.
Absolutely. So you
against the better defense.
Now, if somebody told you right now you choose Diego or you choose Nico, you're going to choose Diego?
I think Diego right now, and again, it's right now. I think Diego should be in the Heisman conversation. I don't think Nico's anywhere near the discussion.
Stop it. That's just like saying Will Levis should be in the MVP conversation.
That's the exact opposite. When Will Levis drops 40 on the Chiefs, thank you for your call, Michael. When Will Levis drops 40 on the Chiefs, then we can have that discussion. Like, I'm serious. How many guys out there right now would you say are legitimate Heisman candidates? Jalen Milroe, who Pavia just beat, Cam Ward, who at Miami, and again, I'm not here to complain about the referees, and I'm not sure that I care that much about the Miami games, but nobody gets a better whistle than the Miami Hurricanes. Holy crap. But I think we have to put Cam Ward in the Heisman discussion. I think Boise State apparently has a running back who is like Emmitt Smith meet Derrick Henry, and I think he's like averaging 20 yards a carry.
He had like 180 something yards at halftime, I think I saw.
Yeah, it's like when I watch Golden Tate play in high school. Like, it's unbelievable. And so him, who else? I mean, I guess
the
Ryan
Colorado
Williams.
kid. Did you mention Hunter?
Oh, yeah, Hunter's definitely in the mix. Hunter's for sure in the mix. I'm guessing, Ryan Williams probably has to be in the mix too, even though Milroe will probably take most of the
I don't
votes.
think there's anybody at Texas, even though they're high.
So Ohio State has this wide receiver, Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, they say he's pretty good.
And I haven't watched Ohio State play this year because they haven't played any interesting games, though that changes Saturday night when Oregon goes up against Ohio State. Let's go, Oregon. But that being said, I think Pavia should be in the mix. Again, he just dropped 40 on Alabama.
They have to win more. They don't have enough wins.
And you're telling me that Travis Hunter, that they're going to win all their games?
Well, no.
Johnny Manziel didn't win all his games when he won the
They
Heisman.
don't have to win all their games, but
I watched
they did
Lamar
lose
Jackson.
to Georgia Southern or whatever it was.
Okay,
State.
Lamar Jackson lost to Houston the year he won the Heisman.
Okay.
And again, Pavia, we can sit there and say they lost to Georgia Southern all we want. Most of you didn't watch that game. I did. Pavia gave them a lead with a minute to go, and the defense couldn't hold. Unbelievable. Just crazy talk around here. And I'm not saying that Pavia is going to be a high draft pick, or I'm not saying that Pavia is as good as Shador or as good as Cam Ward or anything. I'm just saying, give this man his due. Give him his due. Billy from Bellevue says, I'm a massive Vanderbilt fan. I was at the game Saturday. Pavia is great, but the game plan from Tim Beck and Jerry Kill was the reason they scored 40. The things they could do with Nico would be insane. I'm sorry, guys. Nico's got a good coach. And Nico can't throw for 300 yards unless he's playing Chattanooga Sisters of the Poor. And I'll say this about Nico. It's probably not fair, given how young he is, and that the expectations are so high because of the fan base he plays for and the money that he's making, reportedly, in order to play quarterback for them. But that's the deal. When you take the reported, rumored, whatever you want to say, when you take the $8 million to go to UT and UT fans think you're the savior, like the expectation is not that you're going to run the ball out of bounds against Arkansas and score 14 points. The expectation is that you're going to be in New York, that you're going to be a superstar. And that's the reality that comes with, the job. The 2.5, the two-way street. See, again, another texter says, did Diego beat Georgia State? Again, I watched Lamar Jackson lose to Houston. And in fact, I'm going to pull up Pavia's stats because I think Vanderbilt got off to a terrible start in the first half in that game. And then Diego led them back. And Georgia State scored with, I think, like 13 seconds left on the clock. Scored a touchdown. Vanderbilt still scored 32 points, which, granted, it's Georgia State and they should score more. But let's see. Pavia in that game.
It is nice to see Vanderbilt scoring some points.
Pavia had 270, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He also added 40 on the ground. So 2 touchdowns, no picks. And let's pull up the play-by-play because I want to know exactly when Vanderbilt scored. Vanderbilt scored let's see. Vandy scored a touchdown with 1:14 to go in the game. So with 1:14 to go in the game, Vanderbilt scored. Diego Pavia had a lead. The defense couldn't hold. But that's his fault. I also, for the life of me, cannot with this whole oh yeah, Nico's so much better than Pavia. I watched them both play Saturday. Nico
Well, he's
played
bigger,
a
faster,
worse
stronger,
defense.
that kind of stuff,
Sure, Nico's absolutely got more upside. But right now, I'm talking, the cartel has your family today. They don't have your family 6 years from now. They have your family today. And today, I am taking Diego Pavia over Nico Iamaleava. And I'm doing it because, again, Nico played a worse defense and scored 14 points and didn't know how much time was on the clock. And Pavia scored 40 against Alabama. And I don't want to hear that it was Tim Beck and Jerry Kill. I mean, there's a reason why Diego's the one that's getting the money, the NIL money. There's a reason, because he's the one doing it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. A lot of people apparently want to weigh in on this. And I just got one final thought that I've got to get off my chest, which we'll do next. And your phones, Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 through the game.
Yamaliama. This is going to be the last play of the game. Scrambles and is shoved out of bounds. No time left. Arkansas pulls the upset.
Last play, for all the poise that Nico has, he's sort of lost track of the situation there, Kirk, with the clock winding down.
Yeah, but remember I talked about the three defensive backs. They kept these three back to take away any of the vertical shots, and then they had the underneath tight coverage. He's trying to get the ball to the left here to 19 stays. Watch how he's looking that way initially, and he comes off of it. That's just look at his head. Looks. Now he's got to try to make a play. There's no one open downfield. So now he's thinking, somebody work with me. Somebody work with me.
Got to let it go, though.
Yeah, there's nobody there. Yeah, of course, you got to let it go. Young guy lets it just kind of, he was so locked in on that left side. There's nowhere to go with the ball. And, yeah, you should throw it up, give somebody a chance. But he's a young guy. He'll learn from it. Really, this is about Arkansas. It's about what they did at home tonight, pulling off this upset.
Herbie. He's a young guy. He'll learn. Brother, this is UT. This is not the minor leagues. He's not getting paid like it's the minor leagues. Nico has yet to do anything against actual competition. I could not believe the caller that said that Nico's better. I just couldn't believe it. Tom is up next here on our program. Thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. The On 3 has their weekly Heisman rankings. So Ashton Janty is the running back at Boise State. He's number 1. Travis Hunter 2, Cam Ward 3, Jeremiah Smith 4, Curtis Rourke at Indiana is 5. I'll take your word for it. Jalen Milroe and Ryan Williams are tied for 6. Kyle McCord at Syracuse is 8. And Diego Pavia is tied with Cade Klubnik for 9th. Just saying. Tony is up next on our program. Tony, thank you for calling. Go ahead. Tony,
hello?
Go ahead.
Yeah, hey, can you hear me?
Yep, go.
Hello?
Go.
I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go. You're on the air. Go.
Listen. Okay, so anyways, you got these young kids coming up, but I've only seen Pavia do it like he's doing it now. Montana, Brady, Mahomes. They all had killer instinct, and they always take it down on the wire under pressure, and that's what this team needs. Somebody who can make it happen under pressure. And those 3 guys do, and now you got Pavia. That's it.
Well, okay, thank you. I would not say, when it comes to Pavia, I'm not ready to start talking about Brady and Montana. I will tell you this. We oftentimes talk about the it factor. And I use Vince Young as the example. Vince Young has probably the most talent of any player the Titans have ever had, or he's certainly up there. Javon Kearse level talent. Javon Kearse, Hainsworth, Vince Young, Chris Johnson, like that group. Vince Young did no work in the NFL, was not interested in being coached, and ended up flaming out, not getting a real second contract. But because of the it factor that Vince Young had, he was Rookie of the Year and made 2 Pro Bowls, like in the NFL. Not saying that Diego Pavia is Vince Young, because, again, Vince Young's one of the greatest college players who ever lived. But Will Levis didn't do that in college, and he's not doing it in the pros. One texter says, Pavia had a QBR of 80.7, Nico 64.1, and I'd give Vanderbilt the edge on tougher schedule to this point. Well, here's the other thing, too. Nico should be behind Pavia because Pavia has so much experience. The problem is, will Nico ever ascend? I mean, I hate to say this. We talk about this when it comes to Will Levis, and we talk about all the time we wasted just waiting for Mariota and the opportunities the Titans had. They could have drafted Patrick Mahomes, but obviously they didn't because they had Mariota. And so just the time they just wasted. And we talk about that with Will Levis, about, if you wait and you wait and you wait and you wait, how much time will you waste? Think about how much time the Vols wasted on Jared Garantano. And I'm not saying Nico is Jared Garantano. I'm not saying that. But I haven't seen better yet against real competition. I have not seen better yet. And that would concern me at least a little bit. One texter says into the text line, why did you shoot down Hendon Hooker for Levis 2 years ago? Because Hooker was a dog compared to Levis, but you weren't interested. Do you just pick and choose? Well, I'll say this. I watched all three guys, Richardson, Hooker, and Levis, play against Georgia. And I felt like Will Levis gave Georgia a chance, or gave Kentucky a chance to win that game. And I didn't think that Hendon Hooker looked that good against him. Plus, Hooker had a knee injury, was older. Like, those things do play a role. And in the case of Diego Pavia doesn't have a knee injury. Diego Pavia is healthy, which is like Ian saying, well, Diego Pavia is going to get hurt. Well, he hasn't gotten hurt yet. Will Levis has been hurt each of the last 3 years. Diego Pavia has not been hurt. Now, I don't know what Diego Pavia's history at New Mexico State was. But I did text Willie Donick. I'm really fascinated by this. And I'm not to say that Willie is, I don't know what he's going to pick. But I did ask him, Cartel has your family, you have to win an NFL game, Pavia or Levis. I'm thinking that Willie's going to take Levis. You know, Willie's very conservative when it comes to sports takes. So Ian has the line that, you know, Levis has won an NFL game, and I could see Willie having kind of the same approach to it. But Willie does love Vandy. And I know he loves Pavia right now. So I am fascinated to see which side of this Willie is going to come out. We had Clark Lee on today. He was excellent. Ian, I assume Clark Lee is going to be on the Commodore Hour with Kev.
He usually is. I would assume so, yeah.
Clark Lee, assuming that is coming up with Kevin with the Commodore Hour, which is next. Yankees and Royals, 7 o'clock. Stillman and Company. We'll see you all tomorrow, too.